Hello and welcome back to another Wednesday live show. I hope you all are having a wonderful week and not burning up to death in the lovely summer weather we're having. We are down to 100 degrees Fahrenheit now.
Yeah, it's only 100, nothing.
It's been great. The sky starts sweating at some point and rains a little bit. I'm like, oh, thank God.
It's spitting on us.
I'll take it. I will take it. So, anyway, yes. Hello to everybody in the chat. This is my wonderful painter, the painter, Flo. There is only one. Disembodied voice.
Hello.
There has been requests to have you wave on camera, but, I would hate to.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay, there you go. So, all introductions aside. How's everyone doing in the chat tonight? Let's check in on everybody. Kellis Rain to be the first to be here. Yo, War Machine. I know. I'm excited. We can talk about War Machine. We can talk about all sorts of games and other things that we find aesthetically interesting tonight. Paul, thank you as always for being my wonderful moderator. Hi, Paul. He stays up super late at night. And I would feel bad, except he does it anyway, so
it's not interrupting his schedule at all. It's fine.
Whenever he sets up Phasmo games, it automatically puts him in U.S. servers because it just knows. It's like, whatever. You're like honorary American, I guess. Jeremy, hey man, how's it going?
Yellow.
Applying for new jobs. Now you're about to head back to Washington. Ooh, okay, well, I hope you find something that treats you well. Savage Brewski, hello.
Yellow.
Thomas Grable, welcome to the chat.
Hi.
Stream Elements, running, welcome. Splendor Den, good to see you, man. Bills, hello. Revok Cronenberg, appreciate you joining. All right, so Kellis is working on my Dester's Cavalry. Ooh, nice. Savage, we saw the hand. All these happy heart faces. Interesting. Jeremy says, interesting bases for those Marines. Would you like to comment a little bit on what's in the viewfinder, in the picture here?
The viewfinder. We're throwing back today. All right, so these are some white scars and scepters that I am doing for Louise. He's a local game store owner. Mm-hmm. I've been painting for him for a little while. And I did not build these. We're doing a desert theme bases, so it's basically sand, but I did not build any of the things that they're actually sitting on.
But it looks like he's got them magnetized?
He does. He has them magnetized so you can actually move them and adjust the way they are sitting on their bases.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. Like, it's a chunky bit, but those are the thick bases, I guess, the thick, whatever they are, poles, so that normally you have the really thin little plastic kind of flat curved thing that looks really cool until it breaks instantly from, use. So these are obviously a little bit more hardy. They make the whole thing look very beetle-like to me. Like, I get a very strong beetle vibe out of them.
I think those little jump packs give them all kind of a little beetle look now that you mention it.
Right? There's this sort of silhouette of that.
My only complaint with them is that the weather is so hot that the magnets keep popping off of them. Not always a problem, but it has happened a few times.
Oh, interesting.
So I have had to re-glue them a few times. I re-glued one when I got here.
Just the with regular super glue?
The little ball bearing sitting on top of the plastic.
But super glue shouldn't be fluctuating the heat.
I don't know. For whatever reason, it doesn't want to fit.
It seems to.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I'm not sure if too much prolonged heat weakens it or maybe weakens its bond against something else. I'm not sure.
Well, that's true. If you ever check the this to that website, it's actually really handy for knowing how to connect things because not everything bonds in the same way. Super glue specifically is really good for, 3D prints, but an ABS plastic where you get the chemical bond where it's like that melting effect of everything permanently clicking together.
Well, the PLA, I think, is melted together with cyanoacrylate.
Okay.
Like the CA glue.
So there you go. Plunderden says, still hard at work on my game table commission. Yeah, game tables are some serious work. How's that 6-story building coming along?
Well, it's the final floor. It's let's see here. It is built and now needs to be what do you call it? Like
Rubbled.
Not weathered, rubbled. There you go. It needs to be rubbled.
We need to find the rubble base. Anyway, Mandragora says, dang it, I'm late. No, you're fine. We just got started. It's all good. Interesting bases for those Marines. Yeah, that's the desert theme. He's asking what's up with the heads. They're just helmeted, aren't they? Like
Yeah, they got astronaut helmets on top of their helmets because they do have helmets underneath them.
So yeah, that's what happened.
You can't ask me. I didn't
What is
design
it,
the model.
The yo dog, I heard you like helmets. Put helmets on your helmets.
Tomo says, working on Mad Electromancer for Smaug for use in Requiem. I guess it's not spelled in the Tolkien way, so I can't say it that way, but I feel like the word smog is forever ruined. I have to always say it in this ridiculous, overly enunciated way. Paul, also, Miranda, in your intro music makes excellent suspense music to get a ready or not level complete. Kept me on time. Excellent. I love my intro and outro music. White Bat Audio was an amazing discovery, and that man is very, very talented.
Oh yeah, he does really cool music.
And he's on Spotify.
That's right. So Flo has a soundtrack of him.
It might be my Halloween playlist, you know.
Mr. Kyle, hey, incredible people. How are you all holding up tonight? Hope you're fine. We are. Thank goodness for modern conveniences. I am very grateful for air conditioning these days.
Oh, yeah.
It's been mighty hot, but at the same time, summer is always kind of an interesting time because it does feel like there's a lot of potential, and then late summer is sort of different. It feels like the year's waning and all of that.
So we turned off the air conditioner because it makes a lot of noise.
Mm-hmm.
We turned it off 20 minutes ago, and it's up to 78 degrees now already.
Which means it'll be 85 by the time we're done. Probably something like that.
I don't function well in the heat. My brain turns to mush. I become mashed potatoes.
You see Flo just fall out of her chair. We'll be like, I guess the show's getting close to done.
It's funny, I grew up such a little desert rat that, I don't even have an air conditioner in my car. It just doesn't bother me. It's fine.
Well, heat isn't just a desert thing. I mean, even when I'd lived in New York, New York summers were disgusting.
Well, I'm dry heat.
Dry heat
Desert heat is what I like.
Yeah.
I
Humid
have
heat is
noticed a
gross.
huge difference since moving here. The dry heat is way easier to handle.
Yeah.
I am known for when being in humid weather when it's really hot, having panic attacks, feeling like I can't breathe.
There's a
So
certain
no, I
sophistication
don't
to
really
it.
get that here.
Same with Oklahoma. I remember summers there, it was just this bizarrely stuffy feeling, but then you had all the other elements of being in a very wet environment when it's super hot. You just have the unmitigated growth of everything around you.
You just have to commit
Constantly
to
feel
it.
like you just got out of the
'Cause
shower.
When I was a teenager, I used to spend my summers in Louisiana, and that's a very humid, hot, and you just lean into it and just,
Yeah.
that's that.
I haven't done that. I haven't had that experience yet. I feel like it's coming. Let's see, Paul, my 3D printer resin flows so much better with higher temperatures. Well, yeah, that's the thing. DJ, you run heaters in there's a dedicated room. Yeah, and to keep it at a pretty high temperature.
We have 2 bathrooms in our apartment, and the second bathroom is set up with all of our 3D printing, and we actually do keep a little space heater in there, especially for the winter time, to make sure that heat is regulated, so that way
What temperature do you guys try to get it up to for printing?
It's got to be in the 80s.
you know, you can
They usually try to keep it from 72 to 80 degrees in there.
72 to 80 degrees.
There you go. So
Oh, okay. I know on the PLA printer like we have, if we were to print ABS, which you can print, people when they do it, they usually build a little box housing around it to keep the heat in. Otherwise, it separates from the build plate a lot easier.
Yeah, no temperature fluctuation, especially on a larger print bed too. I imagine you have to really monitor that.
Yeah, but it's like proper ABS, so it's kind of worth doing for some projects. But ABS also off gases like stuff you don't want to breathe whenever
That's
it's hot.
also true. It has toxic.
So if you do that, do it in your garage or something.
Just keep it outside. Right now, nowadays you can keep it outside. Although, man, if we literally kept any PLA outside, it would just melt. Like, it is so hot outside.
Oh yeah, last week was over 100 degrees every day of the week.
I think that, yeah, it was averaging 106, I believe, for the week. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, I've been locked up in my apartment almost nonstop. I don't leave unless I have to.
Bills, trying to get back to painting. I am finally on the upside of my recovery from necrotizing pancreatitis. Oh my gosh.
Oh gosh.
Spent way too much time on my back. Holy cow, wow. We're very happy to have you here, Bills, and congratulations on your recovery. And, well, getting back to painting should be definitely a nice change. Holy cow. Chekaroo Hi, kids. Hi. Jeremy says the rubble base is in the Dantoonie system?
The Dantooine.
Dantoonie.
It's supposed to be Dantooine.
Oh, okay.
Because that's where the rebel base is. Not the rubble base. Although maybe if it's a rubble base, maybe that is different.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Rubble, not rebel. Gosh. You think I'm trying to get reference movies around here?
Would the
Oh,
rubble
we never
base
do
be under
that.
Barney's house?
Anyway, Patty, hi. Kellis, Rain, I'd rather y'all be comfortable and turn it off because of a little noise. It's a lot of noise.
It's not a little noise.
It's a lot of noise, and that's okay. We'll happily suffer for our art, which is to say, I'll make Flo suffer for my art. But she's okay. She's a strong, independent woman who handles this just fine. I don't know.
But the
Just
last
randomly compliment people you want to abuse, and you get away with a lot of stuff.
abuse. Last week it got really hot at the end of stream though.
Yeah, it did. It did indeed.
Not last week, the week before.
Well, yeah, the last stream.
The last stream.
It's okay. It'll get cooler. The heat has not been as bad. David, good evening. Enjoying a painting evening with you with some Frostgrave terrain. Is that like official Frostgrave terrain or just terrain you have that you're building out for Frostgrave? I actually don't know how much of that stuff was it Osprey Games made that was proprietary. Paul says, had a quick ready or not game before the stream when your intro music started. I knew I had to finish the level right now. That's really fun. And Northeast England is always humid. I imagine all of England is humid. All of England is like fits inside New Mexico. It's not your house. Doesn't have that far it can go to get away from humidity.
Yes, I hear England is just very wet in general.
It is
humid and
that's why it's so beautifully like gray but green and gray.
when I went there, it was beautiful. I still have photos of it. Like,
Yeah,
it's so pretty.
it does sound really nice.
I just don't like your guys' food. No offense.
Well, I mean,
I was also a vegetarian when I went out there. It was a bad choice. Bad choice.
yeah, it's
Really, you didn't get to engage in all the boiled meat?
No, just a lot of very soggy boiled vegetables, which is yeah.
Gotta get into sautéing, man. That's the way. That's the way right there. I mean, the English have persisted for a long time, being able to persist on very little, or subsist on very little.
I'm sure they have some really good things. It was just not stuff that was available to me because I was there with like on a class trip,
Right.
and so like where we could go was very limited.
Let's see. Chuckaroo working on antique 25mm British colonial troops. Nice. Now, what attracts you to such 25mm British colonial troops? Mandragora, yeah, so I lied. I got my primed dragon last month, but I didn't actually start painting him. I'm at color choice paralysis. Oh no.
Oh yeah, familiar with that. It's nice when you're painting for other people because a lot of them have an idea of what they want. They're just like, we want the box art, or we want these to be blue. We love blue.
Okay,
like,
yeah.
oh, okay. Well, that makes it easy.
Just some
pull out the blue.
constraints that give you, yeah, and then you
Can't really get the paralysis when it's very limited in what you can actually do. Now with my own models, way different.
That's fair. You haven't really started on any of them, huh?
Oh no, I haven't started any of the Harlequins. I wanted to take a break and do something a little less tedious. So I did work on a little bit of my board game models for Nemesis, and I have some of those with me.
And you painted a cat.
Yeah, it's the first player marker. It's what you pass around to show who's
Oh,
playing
that's
first.
for Nemesis?
That's for Nemesis.
I thought that was just like a 3D print, like, for
No,
yucks.
it's my little catsternaut.
Excellent.
I'll put him up in a bit.
Nice.
So the Cat's-or-not is for that game.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hey,
wow.
he's the little first player token. They
You should put him
had.
in the middle of those guys. I mean, he looks like he fits, kind of.
It's true. So if you-
He's kind of chonky like those guys are.
I don't know if you'll
Yeah,
be able
just
to
stick him
see
in the middle, right?
Maybe?
Yeah, try.
feel like-
Not sure if he'll be able to be seen through them.
We'll give it a go. It's not bad, actually.
No, but yeah, he's for Nemesis. The original Nemesis board game came with a little raccoon-looking thing, and he's kind of wonky looking. But I really like the cat one. I think he's adorable.
Cat one is quite cute. Let's see. Mr. Kyle, tonight I want to believe I can assemble a full 10-man unit. Wish me luck.
I will be incredibly impressed.
You have
Good luck.
an hour and 12 minutes. Well, no, that's not true. You have all night.
Well, it depends. Because, like, some 10-man units are way harder than others.
That's true.
Like, if you make a 10-man unit of your little horsey mans,
Oh my
It took
gosh.
forever for you to get just 5 done.
Those guys took 900 years. It was so incredibly long to get those done. But if you had like Space Marines, the push fit
like
stuff,
push-fit space marines, then
yeah,
that's quick.
10 is you're going pretty easy there. So it really depends on what it is you're putting together. Well, for my 3D printer, I use the Anycubic Water Washable Plus. It flows better at lower temperatures, but is weaker. Drop something and more likely to break. Ooh, that's no fun. Paul, I want to stick around, but I've been called to check some breakers at a historic building. Miss you guys, Miranda. Just released my next book. Need to get a copy to you here soon. Oh, yes, please. Well, go do what you need to do, because if you need to check on some breakers at a historic building, that usually means that they're worried about a fire. So go deal with that. You are a responsible adult.
Save all of the hysterical things.
Save all. Rebecca, shots fired on British food. Yes. No regrets. Jeremy, so first attraction to space combat games. Ground Zero games, full thrust, because you could have Babylon 5 ships in the game. If you like Babylon 5. Or if you hate Babylon 5 and a game reminds you of Babylon 5, is that going to put you off of it? Because the aesthetic reminds you of it?
Like if the aesthetic reminds you of your ex-wife or something? is that the connection? I can't play this game.
Well, it would depend. I feel like you do. You get emotional, connections, emotional, like, polarization almost to different things if they remind you of people or experiences you don't like.
I mean, there are plenty of things that I do not do or that I avoid entirely just because of certain people I know who did them throughout my life. So,
See?
yeah, I mean, that is definitely a thing.
And I could even see that applying to games to an extent. I mean, it's going to be rare, but if you have like a couple who played the same game together and like broke up, like one of them might be put off that game because, there's heartbreak or there's a risk
Anger.
of seeing them there, or I don't know. But I don't know that that's aesthetic so much as like just something else. Check a rhubarb. They were cheap. Ever seen the movie Zulu? Great stuff. I did see the movie Zulu. Way back when. Gosh, when did I see that movie?
That would have to be over 10 years ago.
So it's been a minute.
But yeah, have you seen Wizards recently? Because you kind of see Zulu in that too.
I really just know the Space Metal Alchemy, Dirty Space Alchemy,
That's right, the Red Ants song.
Red Ant song. Yeah, that's mostly what I know from Wizards. So, I'm sure if I watch the movie, I'm like, where's the song? All right, fix that.
Just came back.
Good job. Jeremy says, first attraction to 40K, the Tau, using combined arms, felt very much like the military we are in now, and less fantasy knights with guns. So the Tau more so than Astra Militarum. Interesting.
My friend Brooker was in the Army, armored cavalry, but he always played Imperial Guard because he felt like that reminded him of an actual regular army.
It's the feeling I get out of it, obviously not being part of a real military myself, but like the veneer, the kind of feeling of it, even though you're not using the same weapons, you're not using the same equipment, but just that orderliness and the way everything's regimented has that feeling.
Well, especially like the new Acadian troops, they just look like Vietnam era soldiers to me.
The
Like
new
when I see them. Yeah.
sculpts. Oh yeah, they look really cool. It's funny because they don't blend well with the old models at all. Like they just seem like different types of humans or something. Like a little awkward. Kellis, I just slapped paint on it till I've gone too far to start over. I know that feeling. That was Mandragora. The hard thing to do is I want a dark green body with light green on the inner wings, or a light green body with dark green wings. Feels like the darker outer would be more like what I would think of a
The dark body with
natural
the lighter wings
inner
sound.
wings. That sounds like what
Roman to me.
a natural dragon would look like. So I don't know. And I think it might, because what is it? If you
Well,
go
you think of
dark,
like a
you're adding
bat.
weird shadows. Yeah.
And I think it's just because his skin is stretched in between it, so it's maybe a lighter color as it stretches. I don't know.
It's
Maybe
like
that's
kind of a
why I
logic
think of
to it.
that. But
I don't know. Do you want our opinion at all? There it is.
Well, so if you're going to do dark and light together, if you have an overwhelming amount of the light, it doesn't look as natural, or the lighter color. Just because the lighter draws your eyes to it so much, it doesn't become like a highlight of the different things when you put like a little bit of dark on a light.
Well, and how do you highlight the lighter part if there is, like with a darker skin, like say it's a darker green on the outside and you have all those cool scaly details and horns and stuff, it seems like picking them out with
Picking
a
them
dry
out.
brush is easier
Yes.
than if it's lighter, then you'd have to, go darker to pick them out? Which-
You can either go darker or go a different color.
Yeah, although you
'Cause
gotta be careful about adding like a bajillion colors to your model.
Well, I'm not talking about adding a bajillion colors. I mean, like, specifically, you choose a color that would become the highlights. If you have like a light green, you decide like my highlights are going to be more of an orange color. So those two will stand out very distinctly from each other, but they can still work.
well, you're using more like just color theory to just create like complementary colors that find each other, I guess, on the model.
Well, that would be green and red, but yeah, you want to go close to that. I like using very vibrant colors. I don't ever paint with the very vibrant colors. So.
Oh no. Like
I color a lot.
That's why you need to get your Harlequins up and going.
Oh, I'm not even doing bright colors for those. I'm thinking more Carnival, like the maroon, the red, the cream, and the
okay.
gold.
Those would be cool.
Those will be cool. It'll be fun. Keep an eye out on her Instagram, I think
Yes,
is what you... Instagram.
ID.
That's the social media for her. Mandragora, I can't decide. Maybe I should just start with the dragon armor and see from there, or maybe just start with the rider. Green dragons just demand red-headed riders, or redhead riders.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then that would make that rider stand out for sure.
Oh yeah.
Jeremy says, first attraction to Warhammer Fantasy, the ability to use the miniatures for Dungeons and Dragons. Fair enough. Albert Pedro Tres. So when you say aesthetic, do you mean the look of the model or the game's artwork? Yes. So I should hope...
Maybe now is a good time to kind of discuss what you think aesthetic is.
Okay, so it's been on my brain a lot because, lots of movies coming out recently, but also it's always been a conversation, in the gaming world. I mean, for the last at least 10 years, especially, hang out with War Machine people, Warhammer people, talk about what gets someone into a game. And it's usually like one dude or whatever in there who'll be like, oh, but there's the mechanics. It's, I ask them, what is the way you want to play before picking your army and that kind of thing. And I'm like, I don't think that advice works for most people. Like, it works for some.
Well, especially
It's
if
a
you've
small
already
group.
got like an idea of how games work, but
Which was one of the things mentioned in the chat. So when I think of aesthetic, I think, yes, in addition to the way the game looks, but also like the way the game looks and feels in your own head. So like a World War II aesthetic, does that capture your imagination of imagining yourself in this world? When you look at a miniature and you think, yeah, this is how I want to play it, and this is maybe even a story I want to give my unit or whatever. That, I think, is aesthetic. It's more than just necessarily the way something looks, it's also the way something makes you feel, which obviously translates into a lot of art. But I don't know, that's kind of what I take away from aesthetic as a general term.
Well, I think almost like a holistic, like the way it looks, the stories, right? Like I think lore behind it kind of adds, because it's like, what is it, 40K has a million worlds, right? That, are all out there. They got people on them and stuff. And so theoretically, there's like, oh, look, there's a nice, fun pleasure world or whatever. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's not 40K unless that is juxtaposed against the grim, dark future of the 41st millennium, right? And right. So the aesthetic is always the grim, dark future. And so, you know what I mean? So, like, if you're just someone who doesn't like things being dark and awful and almost like an inside joke as to how bad they are, then I don't think you're going to like 40K. No matter how the rules play or no matter how many people who plays it or something, you're probably just not going to like it as much or very much at all, right? But like if it's something that captures your imagination, like the thumbnail on your video today, you see like these, this like Russian lady hanging out with some big stompy robots. Like it's like, I don't even know how this game plays, but I'm buying this box.
Yeah,
and we're gonna try it out.
That particular War Machine box on the thumbnail is the first War Machine box I ever got. It was the battle box with Sorsha and a Juggernaut and a Destroyer. Metal models, Mark I, black and white cards. And it was hanging on like the little rack or whatever at the game store at Games HQ in Oklahoma. And that drew me to it. Like just that box art alone was incredibly effective for it because it was like, oh, what is this little box? It's affordable compared to like the rest of these other games, and like this chick on the cover looks cool as hell. There's these big stompy robots that look like they mean business. They're bigger than the other guys, so I like that too. Because as a kid, I always had a problem with that. Apparently, was it gigantomania? I think is the that was a word I took away from Midnight in Chernobyl. The Russians suffered from gigantomania, and I was like, I relate. But either way, it was a really, like, just looking at that box art. And you look at it, and it's just the models. There's not, like, any crazy background happening. Like, there's not a lot of the world rendered in it, but it was enough. It was enough to bring me in and make me want to learn more. And you came in, and you also got, the Signar box set at the same time.
Yeah, I ended up doing the Signar one.
So we did traditional, red versus blue.
Well, Ken, our friend Ken, got Protectorate.
Yeah, the Protectorate, yeah. Which also, like, every one of those had such a distinct look to them. In addition, the color is like one way of separating, but the silhouette aesthetic of Signar's design versus Khador's design versus Protectorate's design versus Crix's design, like, we're all so unique that it was really easy to tell models apart. And just looking at the models themselves, you could imagine what their world looked like. I mean, looking at Crix, you're like, well, obviously this is the evil faction. You imagine them, living on an island of, like, that was once a graveyard and bones everywhere and everything's, gray and drab and
child sacrifices.
Yeah, murder. It's just, you can imagine it, and you can see, like, obviously the Russian motif of Khador brings, you already have a lot of built-in ideas of what that looks like. The way D&D has sort of informed whenever someone thinks of fantasy or Lord of the Rings thinks of, comes up with how a person thinks of fantasy, they have all of these sort of built-in preconceptions associated with it. But that's fine because Khador was still a unique world and faction.
Well, I think that it worked well because even though they stood apart from each other so strongly, they all shared like a central steampunk aesthetic that actually like kind of they felt tied together still.
Right, like unless you were playing obviously the Hordes faction.
Yeah.
So
Which technically was a different game at the time.
yes, but always compatible with each other. Crix being the one that probably stood out the most from the general steampunk look. But yeah, like the way pipes and combustion, or steam power was used
I would
in the
argue
world.
probably Ios.
Yeah, that's true. The
Like
Iosian
those
faction.
guys probably
They did come
seemed
later.
the most different. But,
That's true.
but yeah, like it for sure.
Yeah. And Ios honestly probably even struggled more. Like Ios for War Machine and like Legion for Hordes. Both of those seem to struggle the most in their aesthetic, to me. They both had this almost overly smooth look. I don't know. It never
That always
clicked as
remind
well
me
for
of the
me.
Invid in
Robotech?
in the third season of Robotech. The
I assume you mean
Invid
Legion
invasion.
did. I assume you mean Legion did, not Ios.
Ios.
Ios reminded you.
Ios
of-
always remind. They're a different
Battlestar.
color, but the design.
Huh.
They look like the Invid ships, like the
Yeah.
little Invid bots that would run
that
around.
very
Those reminded me of that.
smooth shaping of everything. Interesting. So anyway, that's what I mean when I talk about aesthetic, and just sharing that story about sort of what attracted me first to like, oh, I want to play this game, because by then I'm pretty sure I'd already had like a practice game of Warhammer. It was like 5th edition, I'm pretty sure. So you'd show me how to play Space Marine Scouts, and you'd show me playing Sisters of Battle, and I just didn't care for either of them. But it was tiny, tiny little games too. So I don't think I got a.
Was it that size? I didn't think you played 40K until Albuquerque. I want to say that it was Albuquerque.
No,
But I'm-
did in Oklahoma a little bit.
Did we? I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, barely. But definitely more
It was
so.
not memorable, apparently.
Yeah.
Because I remember you playing Sisters one time against Blood Angels, and you're like, I hate sweeping advance, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because they literally one-shotted your whole army.
It felt so lopsided, like, you gave everything you got, all the shooting, all that, did nothing. And then they just come in and, like, step on you like a big foot and, I don't know.
Well, it was like they're clearly designed to outmatch you in melee, which is fine. But then with the sweeping advance rule, they just defeat one unit in melee, then get to just, collapse into the next unit and fight them too. And
It
then
was-
into the next unit. It's just like watching just unit
was-
after unit dissolve in one.
It was a negative play experience, for sure. Let's see. Achilles, the new War Machine models just glue onto the base. I thought there was a lot of magnetization with the new models.
I think they just mean like infantry.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess that's the nice thing about the 3D prints. Jeremy, depends on what 10-man unit. Yep, Bills, I need to start easy so I may paint yet another Corvus City Guard, then back to finish more Riot Quest models. Are they still making more models for Riot Quest? Let's see, the game is super generic. You can use any ships you want. So if you didn't like Babylon 5, you could use, say, Gundam ships, and you could use them to blow apart the hated American sci-fi ships. Which game system are we talking about again?
So I don't know. That would be the argument against aesthetic, though, right?
It
Where
would.
it's like, no, I just want to play a space game, so it doesn't matter. Whereas aesthetic is, well, no, I like the way these guys look, and I like the lore or something about this. So what game are they a part of again? That's more.
And that's, I think, where I've had, and it was Ground Zero Games Full Thrust, it looks like is the one he's talking about. It's a comment I've had with a conversation I have had with a lot of people who talk about new game designs. When Frostgrave first came out, it was like, oh, here's this really great rule set. And I think there was lore and a base story, but it's like you could pull in any models.
I think that one worked because it was just generic fantasy like you already know.
Like you already have the aesthetic built in your
The
head.
aesthetic is like built in, right?
Yeah.
So if you've ever seen Lord of the Rings or Conan movie or literally anything like that, you're like, yeah, that's what I'm playing, right?
I'm going to switch these up.
Okay. Yeah. Do whatever you
I
want.
think, what was it? The one you play with Hot Wheels, Gasoline.
Gaslands.
Gaslands was that way too, because it's like, yeah, we know what Mad Max is. Let's just be real. We're just playing Mad Max, right? Like,
Yeah,
we're
and
not
so that's
not
a fair
playing Mad Max.
point. And so, but those are, I guess, model agnostic is kind of the
Right,
thing.
they're supposedly model agnostic, but I don't think Frostgrave is going to allow me to put a Space Marine Dreadnought on the table, right? It's like, no, it's basically
You've got to
fantasy.
still be fantasy. You just find something that still captures your imagination. So that's like a different way of looking at the aesthetic.
Whereas like you play Gaslands, it's like, oh, here we go. I'm putting my Night Titan in here, and they're like, no, that's no. And you're like, no, it's Mad
This isn't
Max.
how it works. This
It's
isn't how
Mad
any of
Max
it
cars.
Fair point.
I mean, I don't know if we need to adjust the.
Yeah, we might. Let's make sure the focus is good here.
Oh, that was pretty.
Does that look right?
I think so.
Okay.
So those are the Nemesis models I've been working on.
They're looking pretty cute. Savage Brewski, oh sure, you sit down fresh off a divorce and you're playing against an army your ex played. That person is either going to break down in nostalgia or wreck face in rage. I can't imagine this situation has happened so often, but there you go, exactly. Michael Grave. Avoiding armies or games just because of pre-existing prejudices. I'm just glad there's no clown armies out there.
Or should there be? Wait a minute. I feel like
Harlequins are-
Malifaux's got to have a clown army.
Right?
Not that I've seen.
Oh no, it's just
Oh.
that maybe Seamus is like circle of circus ladies, but not.
Those are prostitutes.
Yeah, that's true. They're not.
They're not clowns. They're zombie prostitutes.
Nobody
Let's be
says
honest
clowns
here.
can't be prostitutes.
Yeah, why are you limiting them like that?
Well, I mean, they work in a brothel, so I guess if somebody's into that.
Maybe it is a circus brothel. You don't know.
Colette had a circus, didn't she?
Yeah, she had a circus, but there weren't any clowns. They had like
They were
the
just
mechanical
performers.
dolls and stuff like
oh,
that.
that's right, the
Performers, I
dolls.
think.
I mean, the closest thing to clowns is probably harlequins, but
Yeah, that's true. Those are space clowns.
Straight.
I mean,
Those
they're
are
They're
space-
Harlequins,
They're
okay?
killer clowns from outer
jesters.
space.
They don't sound as scary.
That was
when
actually
you
a
just
very
call them space
fun
clowns.
movie.
Oh no, I haven't seen it. I guess Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Nope, I haven't seen that.
I lent it out. I don't have it back yet.
Mandragora says, and now Miranda made me think OG Wargamer army custody disputes. I mean, people do it for their pets. Can you imagine, like, the way armies would get separated? I don't know. It just
Oh,
sounds
gosh.
sad. Hi, Jacob. How's it going? Paul, I recently saw an ad for a Call of Duty tabletop game. It seems to be 1v1, but both players have a DM screen, so it looks like a Space Hulk feel of enemies have to be seen to be placed. So it looks like a Space Hulk feel of enemies have to
So
be...
are they just running around as blips until they're identified or something like that?
And that's kind of how it sounds, right?
It does.
Yeah, it does seem like that.
Jeremy, wait, you mean
Just playing
Ralph
with clue
Bakshi's
markers.
movie, Wizards, and the robot piece? And the robot piece who starts off on a mission to kill the leaders? I guess?
Yes. Yeah.
That's-
Pieces. So Necron 99
Is...
was the guy in red, but then later I think he changed his name to Peace.
Oh. Fair enough. The chat is moving quick. Yeah. Let's see. Hi, Jack Smithy. How you doing? Thomas Kirchner. Welcome, welcome. Setting and lore. Yes. So, setting and lore are part of the aesthetic, though, because that's again like what renders the world in your mind and gives you the feel of a game. I mean,
Well,
I think that's.
It's like as soon as you
arguably-
see something from Star Wars, you're like, oh right, and you just think of Star Wars and Luke and the Force and Darth Vader and it pulls all that into your mind just from the aesthetic. And so yeah, it pulls that setting and that lore and all the story and everything into your brain. It just makes you feel cool.
It does indeed.
It's in my brain space.
By the way, someone had asked if we did the Barbenheimer, which we kind of did, but we not on the same
two
day.
different parts. Yeah, we saw Barbie on Friday, and then we saw Oppenheimer yesterday. And I don't know how it works in the time continuum, but Oppenheimer was somehow not as long as Barbie.
Right?
But that's okay.
Barbie felt way longer than Oppenheimer did.
It did indeed. And I have lots and lots and lots of thoughts on that. Part of my aesthetic obsession lately, in fact, which, if you know me, is probably fairly obvious. Jeremy, I think Flo was right. Between armor and rider, very little of the non-wing dragon is visible, so I should decide if I want the light green or dark green as the principal color. Brown's out. Jeremy, that's the exact same first box I got for War Machine. My second purchase was the Butcher. Man, screw the Butcher. there you go. That's where the aesthetic works the other way, where you're just like, even, actually the butcher doesn't even look like so much of a nuisance or like an ugly or stupid character. Like, the thing I didn't like about the butcher initially was a lot of people's obsession with the butcher, like, oh, he's so badass, oh, he's the greatest. And so immediately my contrarian reaction was like, oh, really? I don't know about that. And then people are like, no, you need to read about his story. It's so sad. And then I did, and I was like, he is a little baby. I can't have any sympathy for this. What are you talking about?
Saoirse should kill him.
Saoirse should kill him forthwith. But it was interesting because like what I got out of the story was clearly different from what other people did. However, I would also argue that people already liked the butcher, and so they read the story and they saw the more positive things that they liked in the story, whereas I was like, I didn't like the butcher, and I was like waiting for it to justify his existence to me in the book, and it never did. So we came at it from two different angles.
Justify your existence to me now.
I mean, for his
You do not deserve life.
this very overrated model. I'm sorry. It's just
I'm glad my existence is justified to humor in.
I mean, we're still figuring that out, but
Oh. Ouch. You couldn't figure it out over 10 years. Wow, how long does it take?
I take a long time to make decisions. Don't ask me where to eat. But we're talking about fictional characters, obviously. We're not making this decision about real people. So, yeah, it was interesting. And so the aesthetic of him, I don't know that it made any difference. I think people who liked the butcher just still liked the butcher, and people who didn't, which apparently is the minority, me, still didn't. The book did not do much to change my mind. In fact, it made me have less sympathy for him, given his treatment of everyone around him, and it literally being his fault for his fiancée dying. So, whatever.
And in what novel was that? When Saoirse saw him and got real mad and everything started freezing around her? And...
It was not in the novel. It was in one of the books, one of the rule books when they had lore in it.
Oh, it was okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember like reading that and I was like, oh my God, she could totally take him.
She could definitely take him. Mostly, she just left him to die at the gates. Some gates.
Well, that was way before then.
Yeah. That was the only other time. What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
He had, I'm trying to remember what it was. He had come in to a camp. So he had come into a camp early, saw that there were Signarans there, because I think they had teamed up to fight Krix.
They did, yeah.
He just started killing people. Literally killing Signarans and Khadorans for their treason.
For treason.
And then someone calmed him down, and then it was like the next day or two, Saoirse showed up into the camp as well, and she didn't expect him to be there, and she got like upset at his being there.
Yeah. So she didn't attempt to kill him there. The only thing that would be close to attempt to kill was just she knew he was being overwhelmed at the gates in a prior battle, and she just left him to die, hoping he would. And that's really the extent of it. And then they just really kind of did not treat her well after that in the story anyway. So, ho-hum. And that's like where the aesthetic can get really shifted.
The story. Don't leave them to die. Make sure the job is done.
I mean, it wasn't her doing it. She was just hoping.
She just had to be somewhere else right then.
Yeah. Thomas Kirchner, I first got into minis via Dark Future, making Mad Max cars out of Matchbox. Yeah, well, I played the video game, Dark Future.
Yeah, Miranda has a review on it on Media Glitch.
I have a very well-made review on Media Glitch for it, actually. And that's a really strong, like, interesting aesthetic. You have this Mad Max world, which already has a bunch of built-in ideas. It's sort of post-apocalyptic, like, resources are very strained. Having a car is like kind of necessary, and then there's these like really weird takes on like gladiatorial arena type of things. Human life has no value, which is like a favorite trope of post-apocalyptic themes. And then go. And if you like cars, go. So, Gaslands seems to have just taken that. And I don't know if Gaslands has a strong enough of an aesthetic that like ton of people get into it, but it seems to have a very healthy. Well, yeah, I was gonna say it seems to have a very healthy audience.
I was surprised when I saw Craftsman build his Gaslands cars.
That's right. I do love Craftsman. Yeah, maybe it's. I wonder if it's the type of game too that's oftentimes played just at somebody's house more than at a game store.
I feel like that's true. I feel like there's some games that really are like you almost never see them at the game store, but a lot of people play them still.
Blacksmithy. I got into minis when I started playing D&D myself. I think that's when I started. Because, yeah, in Oklahoma we did Dungeons & Dragons. It was the 3.5 edition. And, yeah, it was 3.5. And I painted my first little Ranger model.
Yeah.
Disaster of a model. But it was me learning to paint for the first time. So, yeah, that's true. And the Reaper models. Reaper, I can only imagine, is like the biggest gateway miniature company, right, for people?
Yeah.
At least at one point. I mean, between the Bones line and then just their normal line.
I randomly got into it in, I don't know, maybe the 80s or something like that. I was in junior high, and a friend of mine, I'm trying to remember what it was. I think I was getting into D&D or something like that, but because some friends had played it. But a friend of mine had told me about this place in Hobbs, where I grew up, called Green Spray Books and Comics. And I went there. Green Spray. And I went there and I saw an entire wall of Citadel miniatures. And so for me, Citadel stuff was kind of the first miniatures. But I remember just finding them and just being like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. And then I was all in.
That was it. That was what did it for you, huh? I don't know what happened. Is that a piece of paint gunk?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Thomas Kitchener, no, Mandragora. Regarding ambience, War Machine Prime 1 would never have drawn me in. None of the Mark 1 covers did. But Mark 2, with the colorful armies, absolutely did. And I think Mark 2 was all color, because if I recall correctly, the Mark 1 rulebook was in black and white. And so, yeah, Mark 2 was clearly the heyday of War Machine anyway. As far as like audience reach and everything, their lore was so good.
Oh my gosh!
And the artwork was so capturing and fun to look at. So I agree with you, Mandragora. He said once Mark 3 was out, I lost interest again. Now it's not like they lost like being colorful. Like what would you personally chalk that up to? Like I have theories, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. Thomas Kirchner, my wife and I paint minis just for the hell of it mostly. We play D&D. It's fun to just sort of make a lore for a random mini. Well, to make a story, right? Like this person's backstory, but it's hard to build a story without knowing like the world they live in. I assume you kind of have it in like a D&D setting, one of the D&D settings probably.
Probably one of the best is the little Cadoran sniper, the girl with the eye patch.
Yeah.
It's like you see her and you're just like, you just want to know what her story is. And so I can see if you're kind of creative, you know, you and your wife hanging out, like, it's like, what happened to her? And then the other person's like, well, maybe this, or, you know, and then you start building a little backstory.
That
sounds fun.
That is fun. If you get the right miniature that looks like it has a story to it. Because, I mean, and there's so many miniatures out there, and there's plenty that do that, but they still stand out, you know? You look at a lineup and you're like, that one. Shale, game with great box art that caused me to buy was Conquest. Last Argument of Kings. Bought 2 armies. Then the guy organizing the group moved to Albuquerque. Cry face. Sorry. I have no idea who this is. Okay.
That's right. You moved to your town, so it was your fault.
My fault. No, he's not saying that. But, Conquest Argument. Yeah. That was that a Kickstarter game? I can't remember. That's been a big deal too, right? I mean, you watch artwork really sell the hell out of games. What's that big one? Parabellum, I think. There's like this really, really beautiful lore. You see it at all the game shows.
Was that the one where we saw at Adapticon that year? Okay, yeah.
Like that is, I don't know anything about the game, but you walk past the table and you sort of are stopped by like this really incredible it feels like an art piece, to look at.
Wrath of Kings.
Yeah, those
was
were
also
some of the
another good
first ones that I ever painted because you guys brought Wrath of Kings over.
Like those are really cool aesthetically, for sure. It was a neat game.
Wrath of Kings had really cool looking models. The world wasn't. There was stuff to read. I mean, it didn't lack lore. It just wasn't like out there.
It didn't have a ton of lore, but I read the whole thing too and enjoyed it. It just they kind of stopped there.
Yeah.
And it's like
It didn't get built out anymore, and therefore it kind of fizzled.
Which is too bad, because I like my little squid people. Let's see. My first mini, Paul saying. Well, let me see. Let me go back to Jeremy. Manjagora, I would suggest Googling images of green dragons and looking at the art from both D&D and Pathfinder to get a good idea of what he's talking about. Paul, my first mini was GW and either an Eversor assassin, Vindicare assassin, or 3 Terminators. Got those 2nd edition era as a kid. Parents or grandparents getting me them based on walking by the store. Aww.
like to think a little kid, Paul.
I know.
Like,
Looking exactly like you do now, like little kid's body,
got like
same
a
head,
beanie
like
on with a
walking
propeller
in.
on it and some shorts. Right? That's how that works.
Well, I mean,
It's like in Black Dynamite when it goes to the kid versions of them.
yeah, what? That's what kids look like, right? Well, I mean, window art, I mean, the displays are usually what brought people in, And, I never got to really have that experience. Like, the time I was really knowing about game stores, they were usually like secret clubs you had to go find. I didn't know that they like existed in a mall or something. Like, that was before my time.
I remember, I might have been in high school, but I remember in Dallas, I was there with family and stuff. And I remember walking by and seeing a Games Workshop store in the mall, and that just blew my mind. Like, oh my God, that's here where people are.
People know about this? What? Yeah, I mean, it does feel like that, because it's hard to tell how much interest there is in your hobby sometimes.
Well, it's kind of funny because at the same time, also, when I was like, I don't know, 15 or 16, I just always assumed that everyone in England knew about Games Workshop. That they were just, they knew what Warhammer was. You're English. And it's like
the
it's
national
funny because you
sport,
watch,
right?
you watch Henry
Lacrosse,
Cavill like do
GW.
interviews in England and people are like, what the hell are you talking
Tom
about?
Holland's like, that sounds cool. It's like, I mean, Henry Cavill is going to make a lot more people know about what Warhammer is. Let's be real. But it has clearly the biggest market stake anyway, partly by virtue of legacy. But, they've done a really good job of pushing that IP out into the world through video games and books and really cool models. And then, oh yeah, there's a game. Like the tabletop game is almost the hardest part to know about it. Like, you can get into it easier from reading the books or playing video games.
It's funny though, because so when I was in elementary school, there was a Games Workshop in our mall. And the very first game that I learned about in Games Workshop was a Lord of the Rings game.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, what else?
And my family were like, oh, look, Lord of the Rings, that's so cool. You like that, right? Hey, look, they're metal. Paint on top of it.
Oh, primer.
I remember Ken and I bought in on that box. And we put together, painted a bunch of them. I made an ent literally out of sticks and like glued them together and made it on a base and stuff. You looked pretty cool.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh.
But I mean,
25? I don't know.
Well, that's not as cute as if you were like
yeah, I was
We
in
were fully
elementary
grown
school.
adults.
grown-ass men. We just couldn't afford it.
No Lord of the Rings board box
Box set
like
at that
miniature
point.
game when we were
When
kids.
did they get it? I don't know.
After the movie. When the movies came out, that's when GW started pushing, or I think they bought the rights and did the game for them. But yeah, it was after the Peter Jackson movies.
Gotcha.
I mean, that was my first introduction to him, but because it was like that one instance, my family was like, oh, well, we'll never play this. They got rid of them. Like, while I left to come visit here over the summer, they had a tendency to just get rid of things. They come back and they'd be gone. Whatever. I didn't actually get back into painting or doing any gaming until after I met these beautiful people over here.
Well, you and Donald played board games and stuff, right?
I was new to playing board games like that. Donald introduced me to Arkham Horror, which was cool. But
I like
Arkham Horror,
that a lot. That one's really neat.
Arkham Horror didn't have any actual models to it. The
No.
one that he had
Well,
only had the little board.
Cards,
I was
yeah.
going to say, it does. You can get them, but it doesn't come with them.
They didn't come out until later.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So like my first introduction to like the miniatures, like real introduction, was when you guys came over, and you guys were very much doing War Machine at the time, but you were just starting to do Wrath of Kings and Malifaux, and those were two things that was more aesthetically
Appealing
pleasing,
to you,
appealing
yeah.
to me.
So
Especially
together.
Malifaux.
Gosh, Malifaux has so much aesthetic. Like, it's such a cool
Ooh,
game.
Oozes
Malifaux is definitely my style. Because, I mean, I like horror. Who knew?
Yeah.
I've always posited that Malifaux is probably one of the higher ratios of women to play that game. Like, I think a lot more women are attracted to
Serial killers, yes. Like,
to
yes, go on.
Malifaux because it just has that kind of interesting, dark goth aesthetic that is generally more appealing to at least the types of women that tend to get into these games. Obviously, I'm not speaking for everybody, but
I feel like most girls who play Malifaux play the Seamus crew, who's literally a serial killer with a collection of undead prostitutes he killed.
I mean, it's an amalgamation of Jack the Ripper and the Mad Hatter.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
those are
And
pretty,
he is literally a Mad Hatter,
yeah. So,
which is why I liked him.
so it works out. It's like whatever, give people what they want.
Speaking of a random side to it, I was watching Mahler and those guys, but they had one of the guests on. I'd seen her on before, Mandy Summers, but she's a comic book artist. But she has a series, just Kickstarter, or it did one on Indiegogo, of I forget what it's called now, but it's basically Jack the Ripper is actually a vampire hunter, and the girls he killed,
Are vampires?
they were vampires, and he's looking for the main vampire who turned them. And so he's got this cool like top hat and this mask and all this other stuff, and it's
Interesting
like, what if it
take.
were different? What if it was this? And it's like, what a cool idea.
Like if Abraham Lincoln was a vampire hunter?
I mean, he was though. Like that's historically sound.
historically.
That's documented.
There's books about it.
That's right.
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
That was a terrible movie.
I didn't see the movie,
It
but
was-
I know it's a very popular book.
Yeah, well, there was this sort of like ironic mashup like trend for a while in books, in YA novels specifically. Let's see, Michael Gray, talking about the themes and aesthetic of War Machine is one reason I'm never going to sell my Signet or Circle. Oh, Circle's aesthetic is gorgeous. I just love games and models too much. I don't care if no one's around to play now, or no one around that's here plays now. But you never know when that's going to circle back around. I mean, this is part of the reason I don't generally get rid of stuff unless I'm literally out of room, which basically
That's when you randomly run into someone who's like, oh yeah, I have some of these. I played this game, and you're like, really? Because I have a fully painted army.
Oh, really? If you really have those, do you want to play a game? Andrew, there you go, using the R word again. It's Macross. Macross.
It is not Macross. Macross the first season of Robotech, because I grew up watching that on TV. I know. I watched the Carl Masick, his introduction of Macross into the United States.
Oh.
But it's Robotech. You know what I mean? Like for a young, or whatever my age of American kid is, like that's what it is. And my daughter, she loves Robotech.
Daughter with bizarre encyclopedic knowledge of all things Robotech. It's great to watch her at like a Comic-Con. She just busts out with like knowing way more than everyone else around her.
Including the guy running the
Robotech
booth.
booth. It was just like, I don't know. That was one of my proudest moments. Oh. Let's see. The Plunder Den. I love to build and add to the aesthetics of the game I play through the train. I really want players to be fully immersed in that world. No, I love what you're doing there, Plunder Den, because exactly, like, the game tables should also feed into the story or the world that you are playing in. It's why we have a 6-story building over there getting built up, because we don't know when to stop, apparently. But
Well, because it's cool. It feels more like the hive city that you're in.
yes, exactly. It helps to render that world. I mean, if you walk into a game store, are you going to be more attracted to the table that just has some neoprene placemats on it, or are you going to look at the stuff that has, I don't know, like even a Warcry table, or gosh, you look at some of those AOS tables and you just see these beautiful fantasy figures and, you know, this wooded area and these little, I don't know, stone obelisks and just anything that sort of informs like the world of what is happening there. Like you're totally drawn to that.
Do you mean like a War Machine table?
All right, so here's the deal. War Machine has an amazing aesthetic. It did not get fostered very well, at least insofar as the scene for like what normal casual players would want to play. So, you know, trying to make terrain. I remember at Valhalla one year, we had this gorgeous Mordheim board that was brought in. Just really cool, multi-layered, bridges going across everywhere. And so a friend of mine were there, were like, want to try a War Machine game on this? And it was kind of a nightmare, but kind of amazing because it was just so beautiful to like.
Was it Dan? Was it you and Dan playing?
No, it was Josh. Who,
okay.
Yeah, he was. He'd been there a few years ago, but yeah, we gave it a go, and it was so much fun. Just one, kind of trying to figure out how to even negotiate the terrain and like get to each other, which is sort of realistic, right? I mean, you're playing this game. It's not just the mechanics of the game.
That's how a lot of warfare works.
Yeah, exactly. But it was so much fun. It just added this wonderful level of like, I don't know, kind of real worldness. Even though it's a fantasy world, no matter how fake the world is, there's a certain amount of realism you want in how you interact or interface with that world. Like, what are those rules? Just being completely divorced from that world seems to sterilize it really, really bad. That's my take on it.
By the way, I was looking down here a little lower in the comments real quick. Somebody was asking Flo what miniatures she just put down on the table.
So these are the miniatures for the Nemesis board game. It's actually two different versions of it. So the aliens come from the original board game, just Nemesis, and then the Aftermath expansion is where the little characters come from, and also the first player, Catstronaut. It's a cat astronaut, you know.
So there you go. And that's just a first player token, but all of the outlines on the suit, you just freehanded.
Yes.
Like that's not carved into the model at all.
No, it's just a plain, smooth suit originally. And I saw a picture and I was like, that's cool, we're doing that.
It is way cooler that way for sure. I mean, it gives it a very comic book outline, like that kind of pop art type of deal.
Looks like it belongs in The Fifth Element somewhere.
Rebecca, I wonder if there's a difference between genders regarding what attracts a person to a war game. Huh.
I don't know.
You know?
I mean, right? Where it's just like guys are more interested in the mechanics or girls are.
Oh, as far as what? I think it's aesthetics for both, like 99% of the time.
I think maybe more guys will be more interested in mechanics and stuff, but I still think the majority of guys are still interested in aesthetic.
Well,
Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think almost all girls probably are interested in the aesthetic as they come in.
I mean,
if I had to guess. You know?
Right, like just out of the blue. I don't even know who I could pull for that. It's like you and me, like we know we're both attracted to the aesthetic of it. So anecdotally, yeah. Here's what the results of the July poll were, which I put out yesterday, asking in general what attracted people to games as a first attraction to a game. Now, what keeps you playing a game, I understand, is totally different. This is just about what gives you, what makes you want to give a chance to a game. And there were a lot of really, really good comments in there, too, from people who had mentioned, what draws them to a game, in the beginning when they were new to wargaming versus even what attracted them to a game later on being a more seasoned player. And that was something I hadn't considered, because one of the comments in there was saying that, it used to be aesthetic, but now when I look at a game, I kind of just want to know the mechanics of if it's really going to be what I want to spend my time doing. And it's like, well, that's interesting. It's like you're looking for something a little bit different.
Well, I wonder if you get burned, right? Because like there's certain factions that I'll go in or stuff like that where I'm like, oh, I like this. And then it just ends up not playing the way that it looks like it would play, which I think can hurt the aesthetic. Because if you don't feel like, if you're like, oh, I have a Khador Juggernaut, and he walks in and just some dude with Weapon Master runs up and kills him in one round, you're like, how is that a big tank? You know what I mean? And then it doesn't feel like it fits your aesthetic anymore.
Yeah.
And so like I can see how that could help crumple. You know what I mean? Like it would offend the aesthetic, or I'm sorry, the rules could offend the aesthetic, and it might diminish it for you.
That's an interesting point. I mean, I know that'll oftentimes be a reason for someone switching factions within a game to trying something different, but...
Oh, yeah. I've seen that a lot, I think.
Oh, yeah, constantly. In fact, I don't know, like for War Machine, obviously I was the only one, as far as I know, who only ever played one faction. And even then, eventually, I was okay, Grimkin. Yeah. So Grimkin came along later, but it's like, but I love you both equally.
Technically, you just played the old witch faction.
No, I do enjoy playing the heretic. I'm not gonna lie, like Grimkin.
But it's the faction, just the old witch.
Yeah, she kind of bridges it for me. I can feel like it's quasi. Sure. Now those are some models that really capture the imagination. Old Witch 2. Oh my gosh, what a gorgeous model that is. The freaking Witchwood, that tree. Oh, beautiful models.
That was a lot of fun to do.
Just felt right out of a storybook. So beautiful.
Well, what was it? The pretty girl offering the basket of fruit. Like I'm sure that goes a long way.
It's an apple.
Does she not have more?
No, I don't think so. The basket of fruit is, she has a basket. It's Carriana Rose, I think. She has the little gremlins that follow her, and she's a little bit more of a Bo Peep, but yeah, it's different. But as you can see, out of the 178 vote sample that I got on my channel from yesterday, 78% ranked in at the games models, which I would expand to also saying that would be the lore, that would be the setting, all things that inform how the world looks and feels to you, separate of mechanics. And then I also had mechanics as the second highest at 15%, and then a smaller group, but still not insignificant, of people who play based on the social scene. And I think that might be stronger than what a lot of people even think it might be, because it's really hard to play a game you love if no one else is playing it. And so I do wonder how many people settle on playing a game they don't care about as much, because that's the only way to hang out with your friends that Tuesday or whatever. Yeah. So there's that.
I just end up with a lot of models that I never play with.
That's true.
Well, I love it. It's so pretty. I want to play this. Oh, nobody's playing it. Okay, well, I have a lot of really pretty models.
Well, and we've done the type of thing where we'll just go to the game store and be like, I'm not playing anything. I just want to hang out. I just want to talk. So there's that.
And see the cool things people are working on and just
it's
enjoy them. And then
it's a lot of work, dragging models in, setting up a whole game. I don't know. It's a lot of fun, but sometimes, especially if you don't have a lot of time, just going and hanging out with everybody is nice. Thomas says, I walked away from GW because their pricing and company antics. I 3D print independent designer minis. Loot Studios is awesome. You guys use Loot Studios,
We do have Loot Studios.
Yeah, they have some really beautiful stuff.
they have cool stuff, and the, what is it, I forget what it's called, 5-page rules, or what am I'm blanking on it. But the online little community that has all the free rule books.
1-page rules?
1-page rules.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was saying 5. But
5 pages is way too much.
5 pages of rules. 500% of the rules you need. But I think that there's a growing community for that, for people who are just like, nah, we'll just play this thing. It's fine.
I think so, but it also sounds like sort of like the OGL for D&D, when people could do that. There's going to be, out of 1-page rules, there are going to be certain like aesthetic ideas or stories or themes or whatever that I think will come out ahead of other people playing their 1-page rules.
Yeah.
Because it has something a little stronger to attach to.
Well, it kind of goes with a little bit Adam. When he made his, he had a whole lore behind it. There's a space station that's kind of in this weird place of space where nothing is within 50 or 500 light years or something like that, and just a lot of different groups have found themselves there. They don't know why. And so it's just this little kind of squad-based, like, exploration game that you can play as I think cooperative or as PvP. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it kind of has a lore, it kind of has an aesthetic.
Okay.
It's kind of miniatures agnostic.
Yeah.
But it still has a story that you have to adhere to, you know?
And so just if there's enough of a framework, I guess is the question at that point.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a certain, like, what do you call it, a critical mass of aesthetic, which maybe something like Gaslands or Frostgrave managed to do.
Yeah.
Where they had enough of a story that it's like, yeah, you can use whatever miniatures you want, but this is still the story.
But the aesthetic is still, it's not literally anything like you said. You're not bringing an Imperial Knight into
It's
Gaslands.
an aesthetic that has a story around it, but it's also not too specific, because if it gets too nitty gritty into little things, then it alienates a lot of models that you could use. It alienates a lot of the ideas that you might have.
Well, I
it may
think it
not
does,
create
though.
as much fluidity.
I think it does, though, right? Because, I mean, I do think, again, with Frostgrave, it's not like, oh, here's my Ironclad or my Khador Juggernaut, you know. It's a fantasy game. It's like, no, it's still not. Like, it does create certain boundaries, which still allows you to...
Yes, it's just, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like you create boundaries, but you don't make them so niche.
Yeah,
It's
you
like-
don't over-limit it. Like, you know, if you're making a Gaslands car, you take your new Hot Wheels, and then you are encouraged to paint it up and not just keep it like off the shelf, brand new looking Hot Wheels, I would assume. But you're not required to get it to where, I don't know, you have to put every weapon or whatever is represented, presumably.
Yeah.
That's fine to have on
I
the
think
board.
It's just finding that middle ground.
Well, one of the
Yeah.
reasons I think Gaslands did as well as it did, especially when it did, because it was right before 3D printing was as big, is because it's just like, yeah, go get a Hot Wheels, go get your Matchbox car. Like the miniatures were easy to procure, and everyone kind of had the same rough miniatures, right, to start with. Mm-hmm. And so with 3D printing, I think it's gone a long way to be like, no, I can play this miniatures agnostic game, but I can have an entire thematic army that's not just my army from some other game, you know?
Right. No, I think that makes sense. Let me see here. So Revok asked, Miranda, you lead with an aesthetic that is pleasing to the mind's eye and fires the imagination, and I've noticed you are a woman. Thank you. Do you think there is a connection based on gender here? If there is, I feel like it's very minor. Again, of my poll, given the fact that YouTube insists that I have a 0% female audience, and I had 178 responses to my vote, in which 78% said aesthetic, probably safe to assume most of those are dudes. So no.
That's not true. You have a 1% female audience and a 100% male audience.
Sorry.
Google
My
knows-
math must be off.
Because Google knows math.
Yeah. So if there's a connection, well, I think then you start really, I think you have to dive a little bit deeper than just aesthetic, right? Because you can look at very, very generic things between like men and women, and men, the way they look at stuff visually, and the way women like to read about things and visualize it or whatever. Like, if you're coming to a tabletop game, you're coming at it.
You've already self-selected a certain amount.
You really
already.
have, exactly. So it's not, you're already different from like whatever the general populace is. We're all a little bit special here, okay? And so from that, I think then you start looking into types of games. And so something like Lord of the Rings probably had a decent like female attraction for sure, because they know what that world is and they can imagine it and it sounds really cool. Dungeons and Dragons has a very strong like female audience in there because it's a really cool and interesting lore. The mechanics can kind of be as complicated or as simple as you want, so there's a certain amount of like easy access to that.
So it's kind of funny because I tend to notice that in general, women tend to gravitate more towards story-based and cooperative games, which is funny because both of you are more competitive games. So I mean,
I do like co-op games, but I mean.
But that's why it's like
I get moody. I go both ways depending on my mood. But yes.
But and it's why it's like, well, there's generalizations and then there's anecdotal experiences and stuff like that. But that's what I mean. Tend to notice overall, right?
I mean, it's kind of like that one guy at the Denny's who's like, Yeah, Ryan Gosling, that girl will know. The Notebook. I've never seen The Notebook in my life. I don't plan on seeing The Notebook.
I so wish I was.
You
want
want to talk? You want to talk to me about The Ring? I will go on about The Ring.
Some drunk fool at Denny's one night goes and approaches their table. I don't know. I was out of town.
No, he
He
didn't.
wasn't approaching us. He was
just
yelling at
started-
us across the restaurant.
Butting into their conversation about who knows what. And I don't know, going on about the
was-
working man, and then just making these
Yeah.
blatant, stereotypical statements about her. I was like, I don't know.
I was just like, oh man, you chose the wrong girl to make that statement
He
about.
was an absurd fellow.
Yeah. Now Albuquerque's full of so many
Colorful
interesting.
people.
It is. It's part of what makes it interesting, even though sometimes it's scary.
I mean, what's life without a little risk?
So I don't know if that answers your question, Rebecca, but like, that's kind of where I'm going with it. I feel like you gotta, if you are looking at the difference between gender and tabletop specifically, you're just not gonna find as many differences, I think, as you do in like more generic, large population, like questions. However, anecdotally again, I feel like Malifaux has huge attraction for women, and Lord of the Rings. I don't know where Song of Ice and Fire stands. Like that one, it's quasi tabletop war game, very board gamey like. I think it's really
As-
cool.
as
I
an
see it a
audience-
little bit in the middle, but
As an
Yeah.
audience for the intellectual property, there's a huge female
Yeah.
base, but as an audience for the tabletop miniature game,
I just don't know exactly.
I don't see enough people playing it to have a real good idea of that.
So, I don't know. Other thoughts are certainly welcome. Derek1234, Frostgrave was a great attempt at trying to bring back Mordheim. Yeah, I have heard that from multiple sources, and Mordheim, like, there's so much love for it. I think it will come back eventually.
It's a pretty cool little squad-based game, you know?
Okay, I'm gonna change these out again.
Jacob Fisher says, so I'll be repainting my 20 Stern Guard veterans. Repainting them? Oh my goodness, dude. All right.
Well, repainting them? Because I don't even know that they're... All the Stern Guard are now
Primaris?
Primaris now, right? Like does Games Workshop require you to get the
We
new
wanna
Stern
put this
Guard
on the thing.
to make them
Oh,
Primaris
sure.
now? I don't actually know for
missing,
sure.
missing his top.
He's
but
missing his top half. That's okay. They can just look at the bottom half. That's my beautiful Rogel Dorn coming along. Isn't he pretty? Make sure he's in focus now. Right there. All right. I don't have to change focus at all, apparently. Yes. Beautiful, tasty Rogel Dorn. Nom nom nom. Thomas Kitchener says, Gaslands is awesome and agnostic for the win. Michael Gray. Oh yeah, so you had asked about that already. Stargrave, allow myself to introduce myself. 5th edition came out July 2008, so you had a small chance of playing before Mark II War Machine came out in 2010. Yeah, so I had the minis. I had the War Machine minis for Mark I way back when, because that was when if your arm broke, you like couldn't use it at all. Like the war machines were so utterly
Oh, yeah.
the robots were just useless in Mark
Yeah.
One. It was a disaster.
Just an infantry
Mark
machine.
Two was really when I started playing again, because that came out in 2010. We moved here in 2010. Yeah, it was like 2011, I guess, is when I was like, I'm gonna learn this game, and drove my butt down to the game store and I was like, somebody teach me this. And it was great. So, Nemesis, I looked over that when it came out, but passed over. They look fantastic.
It's actually a really fun game. We like to describe it as Alien the board game. Because you wake up in a spaceship, one of your crewmates is dead, has a hole in his chest.
They look very close to aliens.
Yes, they are very, very much. And you each have your own tasks that you're trying to achieve, and they can go against what the other people are trying to do. You can try to get everybody else killed. You can try to get one particular person killed. You could be a perfectly nice person, and everybody just assumes that you're a jerk. And then they all try to kill you because...
So wait a minute, is it a little bit like Among Us as well, where it's just like, all right, who's got the
Who's
alien
the
in them?
imposter?
Well, I mean, in Among Us, it's like who killed people, but in this one, I mean, it's everything's on the table, and you have to work together a certain amount, because if you don't work together a certain amount, you all die. And you have to both achieve your mission and survive to win.
Okay.
And that's the part that Aaron missed. He achieved his mission, but he killed everybody, and therefore he lost.
Oh, I just noticed Chris Bellu's in the.
Oh, hey, Chris.
Hi.
Let's see. Paul says, GW prices first pushed me into more indie, then into 3D printing. My break was a 32mm Assassin that was 32 pounds. Yeah, that was quite a bit. Jeremy says, I will bring full thrust rules to Valhalla. You can try it out if you want, but it's a product of the 90s, so while it isn't nearly as crunchy as, say, Starfleet Battles, it isn't as easy as Armada. That's okay. I was a 90s kid. I think I can hang. Oh yeah, and Paul has access to the early access video game of Nemesis.
Oh, yeah, I don't play enough video games. I've been playing more Majesty again lately, and that's when the computer works.
Chris Bello, Oppenheimer was a great film. It was a very interesting film. I am compelled to go learn more about the specific events because the color code to it.
Well, because we had learned a lot about the Cold War over the last many
year
years.
or two, yeah, for sure.
Longer than that.
And so seeing where that lines up with things, of course, would be
What was
interesting.
supposed to be, and this is what I was told, is that the stuff in black and white is supposed to be stuff that we know happened. And then the stuff in color is stuff that we have a pretty good idea about or whatever, but there's a lot of artistic liberty taken to make it, put it together.
And what would you say the aesthetic of Oppenheimer was? It's like heady science, you're looking at life through the eyes of, I guess, a genius.
Yeah, I think it's trying to kind of push it in that way.
I think
for
so.
sure.
Yeah. And yeah, so like he said, the black and white stuff is what they know happened, and then the color, the in color stuff is speculative, which is most of the movie. Like most of the movie was in color, so it makes me want to look into it a bit more. But it was interesting. It was well told. It was well acted. I don't know what all the controversy about Florence Pugh is about because I think all the scenes in there were actually pretty appropriate.
Well, yeah, like
interesting.
the nudity scenes with
Yeah,
her
yeah.
were pretty.
Obviously, don't take your kid to see it, but
Well, yeah, but it's like, I think they were perfectly valid for what they were used for. I think they're used pretty well.
yeah, the scene people seem to be upset about, I thought was really
I
appropriate.
thought it was quite appropriate, actually.
Yeah, so there's that. Michael Gray, there's a video game I'll have to skip. I have nightmares over Alien Isolation. Dude, the Aliens game, I think it was Aliens 3, for the Genesis, made me terrified as a kid. That game was
Oh, really?
freaky.
There were 2 games when I was a kid. Sega Saturn. I had a game called D. I mean, basically,
Oh,
this
yeah, I played D. Yeah.
girl goes
I like
into a
that.
hospital trying to find her dad, who apparently went mad and killed everybody in it. And you run into these traps and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
No, it's one of the early survival horror games.
What?
I
Okay.
still
like
have
a-
it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's almost, what would you call it? Like a puzzle. It's like 50 parts or 50% puzzle, almost like Myst
Yeah.
kind of game, and 50% quick time event. Because there were so many video sections. There's a bunch of discs you had to use.
Oh, it's
Oh, a
just
bunch
one
of
disc for me.
Was it? I
Yeah, I
wonder
had
if I
Sega
played on a
Saturn, it
different
was one.
system.
You must have been on PC or
Possibly.
something.
I bet it was on a PlayStation if I played it.
Okay, and mine was on the Sega Saturn. As far as I know, it's just one disc, but I haven't opened up the case in a long time. But yeah, D. And then actually, when I was younger, we had a VHS board game that would actually time you at times because it was a horror board game, and it would time
That's
you.
great.
And so it would start the timer. You're supposed to press play, and then the guy would show up at the end of the timer and just shout at you and jump scare you.
Oh,
And I remember we played it at one point. We were playing it on the bed, and he jumped up and did the jump scare. And I'm just this tiny kid, and I just I jumped and I fell backwards off the bed. hit the board game, ruined the whole game. It was great.
Wow, 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 wow. Oh my god,
I love horror.
All right, I'm gonna have to accelerate through this channel a little bit more. Thomas Kitchener said Barbie was great. Ended up bawling my eyes out. Huh.
You
wonder
sure
if
that
it's
wasn't
all
your
mine.
retinas burning?
It looked cool.
Barbie was a beautiful, beautiful movie. It's one of those things that has been in my head for a while because by rights, I am the perfect target audience for that movie. and it didn't land with me. But it landed with a lot of my peers, and I look around and I go, it's just the aesthetic. It's got to be. Because you couldn't have listened to any of it.
It's the marketing and aesthetic that really did it.
And it's very effective, because when we went to see it, a bunch of women around us, and some dudes all dressed up in like all their pink and dressed up for the event. And I wanted to do that. I mean, that sounded fun. Like, yeah, let's go dress up and go see the Barbie movie. Like, that is more like what you remember even of doing than watching the movie. And that is like the power of aesthetic right there.
Oh, for sure.
As far as I can tell.
It reminds me of Starship Troopers in that way.
Yeah.
Starship Troopers, everyone's like, oh yeah, it's a movie about fascism. And you're like, it really is not though. They just look, they're dressed the way you
would
think
imagine,
of, like,
and it tricks
Nazis
you.
dressing.
Well, and it's crazy because you realize how easily you can be tricked.
Yeah.
And so aesthetic is like, magnificent and terrifying in its power, like.
Yeah, well, and so it's like the actual content of something is surprising, because I would wonder, like, me, I'm actually really good at, we walk out of a movie and I can, like, I remember what happens. Like, I could probably go through the Barbie movie scene by scene right now and just explain to you what the scenes were and some of the things said and all.
Right.
But, like, I wonder how many people could. Right? They're like, oh my God, I love this movie. And it's like, what was it about?
Well, it'll be, I loved this outfit. And that's honestly probably more the intention, I think.
Well, but I wonder how many people are just like, I remember I had fun going to see it. Mm-hmm. And so it was fun.
Went saw it with my friends. I got my little selfie of me dressed up, and this was the outfit I picked. And there were so many beautiful outfits. And Margot Robbie's, touring the
and Margot
world
Robbie
wearing,
is a Barbie.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and that
it.
casting was perfect. Had it been a lot of other people, I don't think it would have landed as well. Like, she kind of was perfect.
Now, I actually heard another argument that Barbie's supposed to be about 19, at least the original one. I don't know that hits if she's like an astronaut and a doctor and all that stuff. I'm like, I feel like you're older than that then. But
yeah, because
I think Margot Robbie looks like
does,
Barbie.
Yeah.
Like, she's a really good cast for that.
So her age is grown up. I mean, in the minds of like the people who play it, like, she's whatever age you imagine it being. It's just not important.
Whatever age a grown up is.
Yeah, you're like a 7-year-old. You don't care. You're like, I'm a grown up. They do this and this, and I just want to do this and this. Like, it's not as limited as what the adult mind tends to think. Derek, you should read the Protectorate of Menoth stories. It really shows how they are true good guys of the setting, which good on Privateer Press on axing the good guys faction.
Well,
yeah.
there's like, they are and they're not. They're interesting. It's one of the reasons I actually really like the War Machine lore in general, is because it is a little bit more true to the way things are. Where you know what I mean? Again, we've talked about it. Where it's just like, okay, was it okay to take Lael or not? Was it okay to? It's like there's a lot of kind of great questions in there. You're like, well, this isn't really black and white. There's legitimate arguments to be made for one side or the other. And the Protectorate, their argument is, hey, Menoth is the creator of man, so you need to be worshiping Menoth. And it's like, that's not a wrong argument to make, right? And so then you start
in a world where the deities are pretty unquestionably there, it's considerable.
Well, yeah, I mean, you literally like, oh, there he is. Like, the old witches literally met him. You know what I mean? And
but I remember him when he was walking around making giants.
He was knee-high to a grasshopper. But, like, so whenever you look at him, you go, okay, well, now we're just arguing over your methods.
Yes.
And now your methods are, well, how extreme is too extreme if you know this to be true for a fact? And then it's like, yeah, but what does it mean? What does humanity mean in general? And so it creates a really
you get an
cool
actual philosophical discussion that you can have. And I don't know if we're allowed to have those anymore, but in the time when you could, they made for a much more interesting and compelling gameplay.
Oh, yeah.
Way more fun to talk about the lore. Way more gray area to talk about in different perspectives.
Right, you're looking at a Tsarist Khador, right? You look at a Tsarist Russia type Khador, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Empress Ein Vanar is very human. You understand her plight. You understand Vlad, why he marries her instead of going after Sorsha, because there's a sense of duty and an important service to the people you rule, right? And they seem to be wanting to go more toward just like a Stalinist Russia, which is like, oh, you're just bad guys. Like,
well, yeah,
really
at that
just
point,
unredeemable.
And
it's like, well, nah.
Yeah,
like that.
I don't know what a lot of the new lore looks like. When the Infernals came in, it just made such a mess of everything, because like a lot of stuff got topsy-turvied, and I guess the Infernals finally got pushed out, but the lines were redrawn again, and Cater feels like they got the bad end of the deal, and maybe they did. I don't know. Like, I don't know. It was a little, I don't know.
It seemed to kind of
It's like
change
the
what they
pre-lore,
were.
yeah, everything changed so much. It feels like it felt like a reset. It felt like a spell plague. It felt like Sigmar ending. You know, it felt like end times or whatever.
Yeah.
And man, I just don't like that.
But it just doesn't feel like it's a genuine. It feels like people just wanted to change it because they wanted to change it. It doesn't feel like the story warranted a change.
Mm.
And for people who really like the story, that's disappointing.
Checkaruba, the only reason I bought any War Machine models was to get Sorsha. Now I have piles of Kador. Sorsha 1 and 2 are so cool. She has such an awesome look. I love it. And a lot of the female sculpts, especially in War Machine, were just fantastic. And even like the lore was pretty, like Sorsha's lore was always kind of awful. I don't know why, like she couldn't get written particularly well, but like Haley's lore was actually pretty good. Like the old witch, the Negra Haley story. You're like, okay, I can get on board with this. Like there's
Kind of
things here.
Fascinating question right there. You know, you're just like, I know you, you know, and it's just like, oh my God, what happened to you? And
Yeah.
and then even like on the Crix girl, Denegra, thank you. On Denegra's side, it's kind of interesting watching her character soften and actually have a weird, like, fascination with Haley, and you're like, what's going to happen? That's super interesting.
Which ties back to like a deeper level of old War Machine lore where twins always have a little something extra going on. There's always something special with twins.
Oh, you mean like Thamar and Morrow?
Mm-hmm. But I mean, just twins in general have, like, there's...
Well, sure, but they were human twins,
They
right?
were twins. They were human twins that ascended to godhood, which I guess is something you could do. The Defiers, Ola Grimkin, did largely the same thing, just they did it from Urkane. Like the Heretic was a self-ascended, and then he got struck down by Menoth, because Menoth
said no.
He said no, yeah, exactly. There's no counting. Gods can be mercurial. Let's see, Mandragora. So sorry if I'm not getting everybody in the chat. I'm going to try and speed through this just because...
Chat really kind of zipped along there.
I know. Well, it's an interesting topic, and I wanted to have everybody's opinion put in here. I'm sorry.
I had already set down the model this time.
For Warhammer Hordes, I was sold as soon as I saw the Warpborn Skinwalkers, werewolves, pole axes. I'm in, right? And there's like, it just captures your imagination. Mandragora Scorn turned me off. They looked like samurai elves that weren't elves. I skipped their entries as just another boring enemy for Signar until I discovered Rasheth, and to a lesser extent Narash. Well, yeah, because was it more of the... Well, what about it? What about them for you was that? Because I always saw the Scorn as very like Egyptian influence.
I think for me, the least interesting thing about the Scorn was just the model, the humanoid model itself, right? The weird vampiric,
like
spiky
the infantry.
elf. Well, just the way that even the Warcasters, whatever, just the actual Scorn as the race of Scorn.
Yeah.
Like I thought the design of that humanoid race was a little like but the aesthetics that they had beyond that, I actually liked a lot of. Right, like especially the stone men. Like I love that a lot.
Yeah.
But I see what he means for sure.
Mr. Kyle, I got into War Machine through the IKRPG. I've played RPGs my entire life with paper miniatures. Iron Kingdom RPG book was the first time I saw plastic, high-detailed miniatures. Love at first sight. High-detailed plastic miniatures. So the new IKRPG. Okay, because the RPG is when the game actually started in like 2000, and then got re-released in 2012 because I ended up picking up the book at PAX, but they were all metal models at that point. So the new IKRPG...
They weren't plastic, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. And yeah, like reading through that lore, especially when you read like the pre-2012 stuff, because it was kind of wild. The 2012 release of the IKRPG didn't have, like, they took out a ton of information that was in there from earlier. And so whenever we were doing like recording for a show that hopefully will someday come out, like we had to look back even further to the pre-2012 release of the RPG just to get like more information about the world, because it is so interesting, and you could read the books to kind of get a sense of the world. I wish there was more maps. That was like a thing that I always kind of lamented War Machine.
I feel like maps
IKRPG
go a
had.
long way to also rendering a world aesthetically.
Oh yeah, they always felt like there was just not enough information. It's like in the 90s when you'd see some low resolution picture and you just stare at it forever trying to like imagine like somehow you're gonna pull more detail out of it. It was that. Chris, I miss getting my butt kicked while playing Mercs. I miss Drake McBain. Yes, McBain. I miss you, Chris. Jeremy, I watched a bunch of videos on making your cars look like they're from Mad Max. I have about 14 cars I need to convert for Gaslands. Illinois Farmer, hello.
Well, you have to get a black Hemi-Cuda.
Yes. Phantasm.
From Phantasm.
Yes. Mandragora. Meanwhile, the Legion of Everblight drew me in from the start. They looked and acted like Tyranids, but seemed to assimilate elves and ogrins as well. Tell me more. Well, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Like they, and
the fact that they didn't have eyes made Miranda want to put wiggle eyes on them.
To be fair, I wanted to put wiggle eyes on like
Everything.
Tommy, I wanted to put like regular human teeth in all of the things. So they just had really creepy smiles.
Yeah, like little square human incisors. Well, they reminded me a little bit more of, I don't know if you ever saw the comic book The Max.
Yeah.
And so they kind of go that route with them.
Yeah, exactly. Legion, well, the dragons in the IK world were interesting because dragons were, I think there was a very unique take on how dragons were. The way Torok was, the father of these dragons, and he'd separate his own anthank to have like other dragons, but then he sort of decided that he didn't actually like having children and was going to go postnatally correct that. And so like how Everblight got away and how all the dragons they do seem to be inherently evil. Like just there are no good dragons in the Iron Kingdoms, insofar as I've been able to tell. The size of Torah, how he has like the entire nation of Krix.
He's just a straight kaiju, basically.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, basically. And it's just that was such a cool take on dragons. It was unique. It was well told. It made having anything to do or being near a dragon very, very serious. Like dragons are scary. None of them are friends.
And their blight is a little frightening.
So Everblight specifically, and blighting basically all of the Miss Elves. Tragic story there. Getting some of the Ogren and just like raising his own army because there's a war he is going, fighting against Torok because the dragons all have sort of the same asshole attitude of like, there could only be one. And like, what does the dragon care about who he affects? And it made the world interesting. It made it feel realistic. Everybody's, there's enough different individuals going after their own individual goals. No one's just being mean to someone for the sake of being mean, because that's not realistic. So anyway. My first foray into minis was Martian Metals 15mm Traveler. Still have and use them. Wow, that's tiny. Although I did hear what the new version of Epic is up to 12mm.
Yeah, I think the old one was 6 and the new one is 12 mil.
Jeremy says, Flo, what blues did you use to highlight the Xenos for the Nemesis models?
I used the Caldor Sky. I dry brushed that on, and then I used a Vallejo deep sky blue on top of that.
Oh, okay. 2 layers of it. Is there a wash over it also, or?
No.
Nice. Illinois Farmer, watching Miranda play Kador and Grim kind of what got me into War Machine. Oh. Jeremy, nope, Conquest wasn't Kickstarted. It's a game made by Parabellum. Oh, okay, gotcha. Chris, let's see. Mandragora, oh, I hate Wrath of Kings. It was all just a front dump, no follow-up at all, but the Kickstarter looked so cool. The models were actually really cool.
Models were really cool.
And the gameplay was decent. Like, it was actually a pretty well-designed, well-thought-out game, mechanically speaking. But yeah,
it was a CMON dump.
Yeah, and it didn't give people enough to keep up with, I guess, to keep it going.
Yeah.
I always felt bad for Rune Wars game by FFG. It looked really cool. Had this World of Warcraft look, but just did not sell well at all. Which is interesting, right? Because the aesthetic can work in some cases and not for others, especially if you ever get the sense that it's a ripoff. You know, where it's like, oh, this is just they're just copying Star Wars. They're just copying this. Or
Yeah, it has to feel like it's its own thing.
You need good faith. Jeremy, Wrath of Kings was made by Simon, but I didn't get into it till it was already a dead game. I also got into a Dark Age game at the same time, and it lasted a bit longer, but not much. Yeah, Dark Age, I remember seeing a lot of those, and they had books, and it just never seemed to get out into the public conscience very much. Skipping over. Andrew, I first saw Warhammer Hordes played in a store. Thought it was interesting. 2 years later, after being into Warhammer Fantasy Battle, found your channel and went, oh, that's what that game was. Bought the 2-player War Machine box. Oh, wow. That's awesome. Professor Castor, first saw War Machine when I was a young teen. 20 years later, still play the steampunk magic war game to this day. Oh, good. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Martians medals. That's a blast from the past. I still have some laser burn minis. Oh my goodness. I could not get into Malifaux, says Jeremy. I felt like it was a weird aesthetic and strange gameplay, but it had a good size following locally in El Paso before they changed the rules. Which I don't know if Mark MK3 is the edition they're on now. It seemed like they improved the rule set.
Yeah, they did kind of condense some things so it wasn't quite so bloated with the number of specific
conditions and the way schemes worked and such.
I mean, there's still a fair amount of conditions, but they're all very intuitive. It's not like every person has their own name for what condition they are going to put on you, and so you have to understand that. So, I mean, I haven't played a whole lot of Mark III. Really, it's just our meta fell apart.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just haven't played. But I think the gameplay really is like, do you like playing card games is what it is, because you are playing kind of
card games,
yeah, and I'm a big fan of card games, so that mechanic works for me. I didn't play as many dice games until later.
Bill says my first GW game was Space Hulk first edition with all 3 expansions, Deathwing, Genestealer, and Space Hulk campaigns. I ended up with at least 50 Terminators. Wow. Let's see. Shale Robotech was the cause of a huge amount of drama in the wargaming space back in the day. Thanks, Harmony Gold. Good times.
Oh, Chris is saying that they settled.
Oh, apparently Harmony Gold
new...
settled. A new Robotech / Macross stuff should be coming soon.
Oh, interesting.
Very interesting. Jeremy, it's Robotech for sure if you watched that series and are loosely connected. It's Macross if you watch the anime from Japan.
Yeah. Well, and also the first season was Macross as well. So
yeah.
When someone says Macross, I know exactly what they're talking about. Like I'm in.
Let's see. The new Genestealers do look sweet, Chris. Jeremy, I feel like it looks so similar. Let's see. Mandragora. Oh, aesthetic. 40K got people in with the marvel of Dawn of War. Meanwhile, War Machine failed to make War Machine Tactics engaging. Because of Dawn of War, we got Space Marine, Eisenhorn, and Darktide, and so many others. Like, that IP has gone around, let's say. And, it would do well for War Machine to have another go at the video game space. I think it would be very helpful. War Machine Tactics was... it ended up just having a lot of clunky problems, even though it was really, really pretty. But its aesthetic did not overcome its mechanics.
Well, I feel like it had the biggest problem of, the aesthetic, I think, brought people to it, and then the game mechanics drove people back away. And I think that they just couldn't make up their mind if they wanted to have just a quick, fun video game, or if they wanted to have a tabletop simulator for the miniature game. And they kind of split the baby.
Yeah, and so it didn't make anybody happy.
Yeah,
I think that's probably what happened, if I had to speculate. Chris Bello is a fan of the new Tyranids. The Gaunts look better than the old versions.
The new Tyranids look really cool.
They do, and I'm inclined to agree with Chris over Jeremy on them not changing the design so fundamentally. I don't think you always need to reinvent the wheel on that. Christopher Hugh got into War Machine for the looks and lore, the thematic lists, and was constantly playing in tournaments versus unpainted armies with no terrain versus tryhards who would cheat to win.
Yeah, and even if they're not cheating to win, just fighting against tryhards with unpainted armies against your thematic list, it's like, it's just not fun.
There's a lot of feel-bad experiences with that, especially if you have somebody, if you talk to somebody who's like, oh, and I don't care anything about the lore, I just play it because I just love this thing. Like, it's somehow like insulting, I guess, in a way, where you're like, well, it's like you're not even being respectful to that game you're playing by just specifically saying, I really specifically don't care about anything you have to say. I just want this out of it. It's like, I don't know. It's not respectful.
Well, it's like I think aesthetics super important for a company, and they need to work hard to maintain it. I'm also an advocate for very tightly written, balanced rules. Like,
well, yeah, I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive.
Exactly. I wouldn't tell people, well, it's aesthetic, so you don't get to have good rules. It's like, no, I think
well, and if you hear that as an excuse, you know full well it is an excuse.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Thomas Grable, I was drawn to War Machine because Brian Snoddy did the art for a ton of Iron Kingdoms books. Oh, a lot of the artwork is really, really beautiful. Chris Bello, a long time ago, they redesigned Eldar before they changed it to Eldari. They looked bad. I felt bad for them. Mandragora, and now 40K will forever be in people's minds as a breathable universe, and not just in art and in a book the way Warhammer is, or Warhammer Hordes is. Caspia, Sol, and Corvus are not and probably will never be real places to me.
Well, yeah, right, because you play, Dawn of War, or you play, Darktide goes a long way. Like,
gosh, yeah.
You just see it breathing, rendered, you hear the voices, you see it moving around, like, you know what I mean? You go, okay, yeah, I know what the inside of the Morning Star looks like. I feel good about that.
I don't know what the inside of the Morning Star looks like forever and always. Morning Star needs an expansion, but the planet side, when you get down there, when you're looking at some of the more Imperium cities or the desert cities,
you're just like,
pretty.
This is a hive city. I get it now. Right.
You look up and you see like shit flying overhead and just the buildings going up into like beyond your vision. Oh, it's cool. Oh my gosh, it's so cool.
Yeah, so I know what he means, because you're like, well, Corvus is there and there's some artwork for it, and I've even read some novels, which helps and goes a long way, but it's like, man, a cutscene in a video game or a movie or people making short films or something like that, like fan-made short films.
Yeah, for sure.
It helped a lot for 40K. Like, no, they needed to lean into that more.
Indeed, indeed. Derek, oh man, Relic Knights was that game for me. It looked interesting, then actually the game was really boring. Oh, hate it when that happens. And it does, there's always a risk, which I wonder if that partly feeds into one of the early comments on my poll about how someone who's been playing for a while might look at mechanics first to see if it's going to be worth their time. My nerd rage kicked in at that time. Nice, Chris. Let's see. Mike, Old Witch in Grimkin is baller. She just won the Siege Invitational. Hell yeah! Go Old Witch. Chris Bello, Wargamer Girl, do you do the Discord thing? No, I need to. I'm terrible at Discord. I barely know how it operates. Like, I learned the other day literally how to leave a server. I don't know how. I'm sorry. I should. I know this. There's a whole development path that I've looked at for my channel, but I'm making a short film in the next month, so that will be on the back burner. I'm sorry. Magnus and Gators is fire. Oh my gosh, I can imagine. Let's see. Rook, I quit War Machine because it was too competitive focused. Everyone played Steamroller only with 2D terrain. And like 2D terrain has its place, but man, it totally overwhelmed the game space.
We'll read the next comment.
Oh, where'd it go? I lost my. There it is. Maxicorn! Hey man, how's it going? Where is this next comment?
It's one you highlight.
Oh, hello. Switched to Warhammer and met lots of people that enjoy narrative-focused games, people coming up with lore for their character, etc. Yeah, and so that must have been like a breath of fresh air. And AOS models are fantastic. Oh my gosh, Age of Sigmar models are so pretty.
No, I feel like even now, right? Like the idea of, oh, War Machine's dead or it's gone or something. I don't think it is. I think that it has too much lore, too much story, too much that's
aesthetic.
still there
Yes.
for it to actually go away, right? It's just kind of moved into the background for a while.
Yeah, until it can kind of.
And I think that they can, the moment they make a game that is just about, if it really is just a pure beer and pretzels game, where it's like, oh no, you put dudes on the table, the game moves quickly, everything does what you think it does. You know, if a model's, you know, big and stompy, then it takes you forever to kill it. If it's these little dudes, then, you know,
Cannon fodder.
once they have a game that's just more laid back to play and really just, and it can even be a parallel game, right? There's the tournament, like Uber Magic the Gathering style interactions, whatever. But if they have one that's just more laid back in a general, like, it scales to whatever you want, you know, then I think that it'll start to get a strong, what do you call it, like wind in its sails, basically, from a lot of just normal players. And by normal, I mean they just walk into a game store, they want to, hey, I just want to show up on this night in the week, and then I go home and I come back.
I mean,
we ran into a lot of those players that just would keep disappearing.
Yeah.
Because they would just they'd run up against the limitations of the game.
Yeah.
And they would just disappear eventually. But they were
Run up
buying
against the
models, they were
limitations of
showing
the player
up.
base.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, if you do that, then it'll start pulling the game back in. Like, I think that's...
And maybe there's already that direction, like the towers we bought, the resin towers that they
those are
came out
cool.
with. There was actual, like, 3D terrain. And Callus Rain mentioned in here that Mark IV has a crap load of narrative play now. So I wonder if part of it is, like, changing the perception.
Yeah.
You know, getting that known.
Well, yeah, right? Like, you have to bring it in. And it kind of goes with the same thing I've said. We're like, how do you get more people to play War Machine? It's like, well, put beautiful terrain on the table and paint your models. And play the big guys.
Yeah.
Right? When you have, like,
Oh,
Titans,
please.
or not Titans. I mean, they have Titans, but those are different. When you have Gargants and Colossals, and you have battle engines, and you have pretty terrain, like, people, when they see that, and again, is aesthetic.
That's kind of what draws you in with AOS.
But that's aesthetic, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And when people walk by and they go, oh, what's on this table? Then you have someone interested in joining your game, right? And it's where I think it goes into that, what'd you say, 78% of your poll?
Yeah.
I think that's where they're missing, right? Because if they just have strong rules interactions, right? Which,
So colossal rules dropped today too. Interesting.
but if they have, you know, whatever percentage of your poll was rules interactions, how many times bigger is the aesthetic crowd, right? From that poll that you did.
Significantly
And
more
so
than 3 times.
if you look at the current meta of War Machine now, and you multiply it times, like, however many more times you have that are aesthetic people, then you're like, the game could easily grow that big over the next several years and be a very large, hard-hitting game again.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Interesting about the colossal rules. I'm gonna have to go peek at that. It's not like I don't have plenty of War Machine models to play with.
Well, yeah, right? We have loads of War Machine models, so we still have them. We still have painted stuff. We still, you know, I mean, we're not abandoning that game. So it's just, you know.
It's just on the back burner right now.
Yeah.
Just
You know,
got other things doing right now.
right? Because I still, the world unlocks imagination, right?
It does. It does indeed. See, Andrew, Gaslands did so well because Gorka Morka was so good. Jeremy, it's funny that I was just purging dozens of Discords I've joined because I can't keep up with all the conversations and really don't follow half of them anymore. Yeah, I kind of had that experience with World of Warcraft. There was a few different Discords I was in, and I don't know. I have like this weird feeling I don't want to leave them, even though I have no real reason to be in there. But whatever. This September, my son and I will be running a War Master tournament for our local gaming club. Looks like we have a possibly 8 players, War Masters, 10mm rule set that can be fantasy/historical. War Master tournament. I don't know that one. That sounds interesting. Let's see. Thomas Grable, I finished the Electromancer and posted a pic on your Facebook page. Sweet, thank you. Mandragora, gods, I'm filled with regret at the moment. I thought I do too much dirt. Let's paint a green grass base. I hate it. I have to fix a base and fix a base, but at least I know what minor color to do for the dragon. Okay. I suggest not letting yourself change your mind on that. You'll get through it, Mandragora, one step at a time. It's your model, as long as you're in a hurry. Jeremy, I really like how games like Warhammer let you design and make your own hero to lead your army when you can design the lore and history. War Machine and Hordes never did this.
Yeah,
there
that
was that
one
problem
that I
of
really
the
wished
specifically
they'd
locked
done.
heroes, yeah. Which IKRPG technically does. I mean, you can do a
But
lot
that's
with
just
the
that's just an
It is
RPG.
just that. That's
It's
true.
not the tabletop game, right?
Agreed, but Warhammer Hordes had a meaningful campaign map because of their anchors. In 40K, I know where Terra is and Cadia thanks to the eye, and no other place matters.
Well, right.
Oh, I don't know. You can go-
Tertium matters to me now.
Yeah, because of
right?
Darktide?
Because of Darktide.
Yeah.
But I know what he means, right? Like and that's what we were talking about with the maps.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it did a long way where you're like, no, I know where Khador is. I know where the Protectorate is. I know where, Signar resides. I know where the Shard Isles are. I know.
Oh, yeah.
And so you get a stronger sense of it where it's like, in 40K, you're like, here's that map of the stars. And you're like,
Yeah.
I kinda know where some stuff is.
And the Great Rift, I guess, now. Yeah. Chris says, Oppenheimer is a tale that is relevant to our current age, a kind of the more things change, ... Yeah, there's a lot you can take from Oppenheimer, and it's, we're in New Mexico, and so there's a lot of people here who have voiced, their own complaints
Yeah.
about it because of the fallout of the Trinity site, and I guess there were individuals that didn't get compensation for like health fallout from, dealing with radioactive isotopes, because it turns out they are dangerous, we've learned. But, it's already a 3-hour movie, and the way it was focused seemed fine. Like, there's plenty of other stories you could make about the whole matter.
Yeah.
And I don't know that...
I think it chose the handful of aspects of his life it wanted to tell, and I think it told them pretty well.
It did. And it did not feel like a 3-hour movie. Like, I was genuinely
really
impressed
didn't.
at that. Andrew Fairbanks, the stronger Zinch gets. The more things change, the stronger things.
Yes.
I like Andrew's response. Jeremy, there's a huge amount of backlash about Oppenheimer from a certain percentage of people because they don't talk about how bad the internment camps were. Why people hate her so much? People need something to complain about, maybe. I mean, I say that as someone who probably sounds like I complain about lots of things. I try to have a reason for the thing I am complaining about, but I don't know if that I always do. But I mean, the other thing is, like, it's a big, complicated story, and so what aspect are you going to tell? Like you said, if you're going to tell this aspect, you really do distract from both things by trying to talk about that too. So that is almost like just a different movie. So make a different movie. There's space for it all. Jeremy, ignore it. People backlash against everything all day these days. You release a documentary called The Sun Gives Light, and the online would disagree. That's true. You do have to remember, the online world is not the real world. But it's kind of hard. Let's see. You remember those scenes because you were a dude, likely with a middle grade sense of humor. That's why 3 of us together can recite Monty Python and the Holy Grail to perfection.
I mean, I have a brain that's pretty good at remembering all of the things I watch.
Yeah, you both are way better at remembering.
And everything I
movies
read.
and reference.
Yeah, I can recite scenes from movies I haven't seen in over 10 years.
Yep.
I don't know why either. I have a terrible rote memory for most things, but for whatever reason, man, movies really stick with me.
It's true. I don't know if you can tell the months in order. Jeremy, as someone who is not going to watch the Barbie movie, I would like to see if I could tell you what I think the movie is about just from watching 3 previews. You'll probably be mostly right, but sure.
Yeah, from watching the 3 previews, you probably know exactly what the movie's about, actually.
Thomas Grable representing War Budgies tonight. We saw
Let's say
those
the
questions
3
with fire.
3 previews. I mean, with a being cynical and watching the 3 previews, you'll probably get it right.
Oh no, just being like what the things lay out and just looking at our current
Yeah, well, you have to have a
current
cynical mind where
culture,
you're
then you
looking at the
know.
culture and you're looking
Yeah.
at like what they probably wanted to push in it. If you're just a normie, like, or someone who like doesn't think that deeply about things, you probably watch the previews and you're like, Barbie!
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
And that seems to be what everyone's going to
that's
say.
kind of what makes people normies, is they're not weirdo nerds like us. And so it's
I have
interesting.
great faith in the people in chat.
Oh no, I feel like the people in chat know exactly
Yeah. Like,
what we
I
mean.
mean,
It's like whenever you
because we're intellectual.
well, it's like, you have those coworkers that they're like, well, what do you do for a hobby? And you're like,
Don't even ask.
Well, it's just like, if you show them, if you were to show them even a picture of it, they just look at it and go, I don't even know what I'm looking at. Then you're like, okay, that's a normie, right?
I just tell them I
somebody
sew.
But I
fine.
mean, like, that's the difference between what we're talking about. Whereas if it's
Yeah.
like, oh, you look at the Barbie movie, if you're somebody who's like, oh, well, I'm interested in knowing what movies are about, then you see those trailers and you go, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I know what this movie's about. And you're not going to be wrong. Like, it really is on its sleeve in those trailers.
I think so. I'm totally open to discussing. Like, my brother and I disagree on like what we took away from the Barbie movie, and I just can't wait for him to get back to New Zealand so I can just really pick at it, because I don't understand what he's seeing that or I don't understand what he's not seeing that I did.
Yeah, but he's one of those guys that likes Prometheus, and so there's just a certain, like, I think physical defect in the brain.
Wow. All right.
But it's like, but it is that thing where you're like, yeah, but I can objectively point out what my issues with Prometheus are.
Well, it's like
And
I
he's
feel
like, yeah,
like I
that's
can
good.
quote lines from the movie and be like, well, how else would you take this? And
Yeah.
I want to kind of really go over it to that level because it bothers me. I wanted to like Barbie, and it made me sad because I was like, oh, I can't.
I commented on a YouTube post, and I was like, yeah, no, my best friend went and saw it, and I mean, her review was as follows, and seeing all the things I'm seeing about it, I'm kind of not interested in seeing it anymore. And someone messaged me and, like, did a comment to me, or like, well, you understand it's not reality, right? It's like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, you're making my brain hurt just trying to understand, like, how I would even respond to this if I even bother responding to this, because there's no... It's so not connected. Did you read the comment?
I know, and I hope it doesn't piss anyone off, but it's like one of my least favorite statements to hear someone say is like, I just want to go to a movie and turn my brain off. And it's like, you can't.
But nobody does.
Yeah, you don't. You just want to not be.
Unless you really are the person who walks out of a movie and is like, oh yeah, I took a nap.
I took a nap. Okay, yeah, maybe
And
that.
even then,
So sometimes
you
my
still
dad.
hear things in your brain.
Well, you do, right? And so it always comes off as an excuse. Like saying I go to a movie, I watch my brain just to turn my brain off is like, I don't know, if you were dating a woman and you're like, well, I only want to, kiss you in the dark. And you're like, what does that mean?
Wait a minute, that
bag.
says something.
You're saying something.
Well, I think it's somebody who, I think the biggest problem, and a lot of people, I think, have this, and I think that fundamentally is actually not a problem, but people don't really think about it that way. It's like, no, you can thoroughly enjoy a movie that's bad.
Yes.
You can like something, and there's nothing wrong with liking a movie that's just awful.
Yeah.
You
I
can
love
like
plenty
it, but
of
don't
awful
tell me
movies.
Right.
but don't tell me it's a good movie.
And I wonder
Because-
if it's just like a lack of being able to articulate like
Yeah.
why you like it, but you kind of need to justify that you like it, and so you.
It's like you don't have to justify liking anything.
No.
You just like it. It's
You're right.
that much is fine, but they're not the same thing.
Yes.
And so I think that's maybe the issue a lot of people have back and forth. It's like, yeah, but I enjoyed going to it. And it's like, oh, well,
That's fine.
I can't tell you didn't. Like, you certainly must have enjoyed going to it if you did.
Yeah.
But don't tell me it's a good movie.
And I don't-
You know what I mean?
Right, and even when I'm asking somebody about like what did you like about it, I rarely try to tell somebody they shouldn't like a movie. I was really pissed off about Thor: Love and Thunder, but aside from me being like petty sometimes, I don't generally want somebody to not like a movie. I just want to know what it is they liked, because I do wonder if I'm missing something. I try to pay a lot of attention to movies because there's, they're taking up a certain amount of your entire life force that you never get back. So
Well, then it's
try
the
not to waste
question, well,
that.
what is it that you liked?
Yeah.
And why did you like that, as opposed to not liking something else,
Mm-hmm.
And that's more just interesting to hear from people's perspectives.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're thinking about, oh, well, a good movie is this, you're like, well, yeah, you know, Barbie and The Godfather. You know, they're basically both good movies if X amount of people liked them. And it's like, I don't know that that's how that works. Although even Barbie, like, took a swing at saying The Godfather is good or not. That liking The Godfather is only a guy thing.
And you're like, what are you even doing?
It's like,
Michael Gray says, I don't like Normie. I refer to them as civilians. And he said, hey, I like Prometheus. Prometheus is a very pretty movie.
No, but that's the thing is you can absolutely like Prometheus.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that at all. You know what I mean? It's just Prometheus has just straight up problems with the way it was written. It is, however, a beautiful movie. And it's what I told people when it came out. I was like, if you're going to see it, you go see it in theaters now. Because, man, you don't want to miss it in theaters. It is amazing.
Yep. Let's see. I think Trollblood's maybe the only real good guy. And that's just it, if you just, like, kind of ignore the one warlock who hates humans. Well, it's a gritty world, right? Like,
Yeah.
there are some good Signorans. There are some bad Signorans. There are some good Trollbloods. There are some genocidal Trollbloods. You know, it's fine. It's not unrealistic to human history. It's why they do feel like realistic stories, because just because you have a culture doesn't mean everyone in the culture acts the same. Like, that, when you pretend that's the case, then you kind of are bigot. I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah.
So, Mandragora, War Machine Girls look so good. That's what I was thinking. Flo is our very own Dirty Meg over here in the corner making all the machines and wonder happen. Aww.
She's
I
great.
mean, I don't think I painted Grimkin. I didn't get to paint any of the other War Machine, but I appreciate it.
She doesn't have enough grease on her face.
That's
from,
true.
You know,
You need to
like,
just...
that's right.
Here, let me get the Mullen oil.
There you go.
Derek said, I always felt Tenegra's lore just had that one point where she faced Haley and then just completely fell off. Like, I don't even know what happens to her life after Infernals.
Well,
Most people don't know what happened after
That's the
Infernals.
problem is when Infernals came, a lot of the lore just fell off.
A lot of lore just became irrelevant.
Yes.
Is, I guess, the problem, yeah. Trolls still eat humans. I think that's considered evil. Maybe ask the Infernals.
Well, it depends. Do they kill them and eat them or just eat them afterwards? Because it's not really cannibalism. They're trolls,
That's
not humans.
true. Trolls
They're
eat
only
trolls,
evil.
though.
They're evil if you're a human. But if you're a troll, it's perfectly natural.
That's right. It's evil if humans eat humans. It's not evil if trolls eat humans, as long as they didn't kill them to eat them. And then if trolls eat other trolls are just weird, though. The way they regenerate and reincarnate and stuff like that. It's a different animal.
They're just not, normal organic things. Hey, Spaztac, what's up, nerds? Jeremy says, I don't think Trollbloods go out of their way to eat humans. They're not D&D trolls.
Except for dire trolls. I think they'll get hungry and go eat anything.
They may go for everything, yeah.
But even then, they're only semi-sentient at best, so that kind of makes them different.
I mean,
They're no
Ever
more
see Troll
evil
Hunter?
than a lion is evil.
not exactly hard to eat rocks.
I mean, they do, though, I think.
But I mean, Troll Hunter is what I was referring to, the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Where, like, he tries to eat his own tail, ends up, like, rolling down the hill because he pulled it out from underneath him.
No, my favorite line in that is whenever so the one guy, they had to replace a guy in the crew.
Yes.
In Troll Hunter, but she was a Muslim girl, and they're like, oh no, it's like, all right, you got to do this. They can smell the blood of a Christian. He's like, well, I'm Muslim.
Like,
And they're like, does that matter? They're like,
He's like, I don't know.
I don't know.
know.
Let's find out.
That was brilliant.
That was pretty awesome.
Derek, Turk was so lame, all powerful, but where is he when the Infernal showed up? Crick should revolt. I thought that was disappointing too. Like, you think Torg would have felt a little bit territorial.
Oh yeah, right. Like,
Michael Gray, all this talk of War Machine makes me miss the heyday of YouTube War Machine bat reps. Maybe someone could make some. Someone who's a wargamer, maybe. Yeah, that'd be cool. Patty's Parlor. Kitty and I got into War Machine because Miranda, we stayed because of the rules. These days, rules will get me into the game. I play with the models I want to, but I am biased as a game writer / maker. That's true. I think you probably stand a little bit apart, Patty. Andrew, War Machine Tactics was a camera and UI nightmare. Oh, such pretty models, but yeah, the clunkiness, some of the games, some of the missions weren't even completable.
yeah, they would bug out. But the game looked really pretty. I actually really liked the way it looked a lot.
It did. It's just, you could only put up with so much clunky mechanics to enjoy that.
Yeah. That's for sure.
Why no save feature for the campaign in War Machine Tactics? It was so frustrating. Did they not add that later? Can't remember. They did do some patches. Like, to the credit of White Moon Dreams, they really tried. I think they just were given a bit of an impossible task.
Yeah.
Jeremy, they did a book with art and description of the original RPG for the Iron Kingdoms. It had a really badass pic where they showed off a series of ships being moved up a cliff face, and it was awesome.
Yeah, we
have that one. It was they're the locks in Point Bourne.
I think it is Point Bourne.
Yeah, I think it's Point Bourne.
Although they may be talking about, well, I'm trying to remember it, Five Fingers or whatever.
Well, it's along the Dragon's Tongue River.
No, those are locks. There's a picture of them. I think of one actually hoisting boats up.
Oh.
Like literally like with rope or chain or something.
Yeah.
And I think that might be in the, well, I'm blanking the name of that whole kingdom with Baird, and we have the
Ord? Ord?
Ord, yes. Yeah. What is the city in Ord? Is it just Five Fingers?
Maybe it is 5. Yeah, I think it was 5 fingers.
Okay. But yeah, I think it was there that was they were doing that. Like that picture was taking place.
Yeah. Andrew, man, that's why I got Escalation and Apotheosis. I love that story mode in the back of the book. Yeah. War Machine plays best at 75 points, but it's more complete at 100. It's too many points. I don't want to actually play a huge scale War Machine is, I guess, one of the problems.
Well, that's one of the problems with War Machine, though, is that there's no rule set that scales up like that.
Jeremy said, I don't think War Machine will ever reach the levels it ever was at. The company did the community way wrong. I think it can come back. I mean, it's an established enough IP that I think it can come back. They just have to.
I'm not convinced it has to come back. I just know that it can.
Well, yeah.
You know?
I'm certainly not convinced it never can. Let's see. My favorite has been all the lore dumps and short stories worth my $5 sub. Oh, nice. Howdy. Hello, Gary, D20, and Caesar. Achilles Rain. Campaign lets you design your own character, Jack, not caster, though.
By the way, I think, was it Mandragora? But he's right. Toy Story 3 was the best Barbie movie. Like, they actually did address it in a very good and real way.
You know what? Yeah, good show there, for sure. I agree with that. So I think we're just about at the end of this. Jeremy said he totally slept through the second Twilight movie while on a date with my third ex-wife. Twilight movies were hilarious. But
we had our experience in the first Twilight movie.
We ended up giggling enough that we were pissing off the tweens around us. But it was fine. They got over it. No one was going to tell us anything. Let's see. I saw the trailer for Barbie and went, I don't know where this could go, but it looks fun. I don't expect a straight cater to the people who hate Barbie for the insert PC reason here. It's a mess.
But it was.
It kind of, yeah.
It was for the people who kind of hate Barbie for the PC reasons. Like, so when we walked out, I was like, what would I have done? And I immediately, within 15 minutes came up with a really good Barbie story.
Yeah, no, I think it really
the
fun.
Barbie story,
yeah.
what it should have been is, especially in the light of all the multiverse stories that are old and tiresome, it's like the only one, like the multiverse story that actually works would be that if the Barbieverse was a multiverse, and every Barbie world exists in the mind of a little girl who plays with Barbie. Mm-hmm. And so Barbie starts realizing there's a multiverse out there in different universes and all this stuff. And then they start realizing that there's a lot of sad Barbie multiverses out there, right? Like where in this universe, it's actually not a very happy or fun place. It's actually really dark and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And you just start realizing that in these universes, those universes are being not created, but like they're dark because the girls who playing with Barbies are sad. And so like the big movement at the end should have been that in the real world, almost the way Inception works, right? Where you have to start, in your Barbie world, you have to kind of get into the mind of the girl who's playing with you to go and make friends with these other girls who are lonely or sad or stuff like that. And so that you actually kind of take like this kind of cool, positive, like Barbie world and actually make other worlds better with it.
Yeah.
Rather than just what we got, which was awful, which was a kind of a
I definitely felt
story.
it was really insulting, but again, like, I don't know.
But I don't know.
Maybe I can have an interesting conversation with someone who liked it and can explain what they saw. So anyway, I think we are quite a bit over, but I did catch up with the chat, and I did want to give everybody their due. So thank you so much for everyone who hung out tonight. We'll be back in 2 weeks, which, when is that? Will be August 9th. I don't know what's happening August 9th. We will be here. We'll be here on August 9th, and hope to see you there. Thank you so much for your thoughts and input into the chat. It was an interesting discussion, and so I really appreciate your opinions, and I hope you got some good hobbying stuff done. You can see that Flo is working away on things, and obviously she's getting stuff done, so yay.
I try.
So you all have a wonderful, sorry Mac Attack that you missed it, but I guess it'll be on replay if you want to catch it later. Appreciate you showing up even at the end. So you guys have a wonderful night, wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. Bye. I'm playing outro. This one.
Barry, cover me. All right, guys, this is it. Copy that. No more sandwiches, Barry.
What's wrong with this place? I'm in the west corridor. I'm right outside the generator room. I'm out of bullets.